Hi, come back!
Welcome home.
Max! Jeez, I thought you missed the flight again.
Sorry, give me a sec, I'll be right there. I'm finally back. How did you know I'd be back today?
Grandma Rebecca told me. It's so great to see you. Today, we're throwing a huge welcome back party for you.
You're gonna cook?
Of course. I'm gonna make tons of yummy stuff for you. It's almost done, you know. All I need now are some herbs, and it'll be just right. Oh, what's wrong?
Nothing really. It's just that you look shorter.
Oh, what are you trying to say? I think you're the one that's gotten tall.
Oh, yeah. Look, I was ordered to deliver a letter to my father on my return. Sorry, gotta go. Duty calls!
Wait! Max! Don't forget your stuff. This is heavy.
Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing well. We're on to, I think it's 14, game 14 or 15 in the Shining series. And we pick up with Shining Force Neo, which is interesting. It's like a very Diablo-style action-adventure, like action role-playing game. It's all right. You play purely as Max, but Max can have 3 different styles of weapons. He can have a bow, a staff, and swords. And then there's like big swords, little swords, whatnot. The bow, I quickly found out, not about quickly, probably like one third way through the game, I found the bow to be hands down the best weapon in the game, because with the bow, it doesn't do as much damage, but like you click the attack button once and it fires off like a whole thing of arrows, and you can like spin around in place while you're doing that. So it's pretty good. And then you have 2 companions that can join you on your journey. from a various cast of characters. Then you have these like, there's like an odd system with items. So you have these keys that you need to open up a bunch of stuff, and you can only buy the keys, or you can find them sometimes, but you can only buy them from like a shop in like their first town, which you can always turn back to. Very quickly in the game, after like the tutorial and introduction and stuff, you get access to a, like, they call it like a stone of returning. It's like a teleportation. What do they call it in Diablo? It's called a, I don't remember. It's a teleportation scroll or spell that lets you go purely from wherever you're at back to the first town, so you can do all your shopping and stuff and increase your like force, which we'll get to that. And then you can like teleport right back. And then there's also like way gates you can unlock, similar to Diablo, right? You can go to certain places and like unlock the way gates, and then you can like teleport to those places from like your headquarters once that gets unlocked. And then you can also go back to your headquarters to get like assistants to come help you. I cheated pretty early on in this game. I'll let you know when I got there. I pretty much got through like the tutorial, and then and then I was like, all right, enough of this shit. Now, as bad as this game, you can see what it kind of looks like if you're looking at the video of it all. It's very kind of like PlayStation 1 era graphics, to be completely honest, even though it's a PlayStation 2 game. They do have some like fantastic like animated cutscenes, like anime style. And then the voice acting is like not great as well. It's like almost like PlayStation 1 era thing. And so the interesting release schedule, because there is, so Shining Tears is the last one we played, and then there's Shining Wind, which is a sequel to Shining Tears, but it actually came out after Shining Force Neo and Shining Force Neo Exia, which is what we were playing next, because these games were being made by two different companies. So Sega had they had like gotten two different companies to make like Shining Force games, and they're all action adventure games, or like action role-playing games, but they're like totally different. And the guys who made this game, if I read correctly from what I was looking at, they also made a Record of the Lotus like action role-playing game too. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, so I think that's all I really... Oh, and so some of the... depending on the weapon you have, they'll have like certain abilities. The abilities are kind of awful. Like one of them lets you move a little bit faster. One of them like slows stuff down. And then some of them have like obviously the rods and stuff. And then some like a fire sword will have like spells. I don't know what the deal was with the spells. They seem like they're okay. They always do less damage than just like fighting. And then even when I cheated to make myself like super powerful, essentially, because it was like, like the attacks, it was like the attack was so much stronger. And then the way monsters happen is they're always attached to like a boss or a gate. So these gates will appear, and once you kill enough of the enemies, and the enemies will keep spawning until you kill enough of them, and then the gate will like unseal, and then you can destroy it. If you do enough damage, then the gate will just die automatically without having to break like the seal or whatever. And when I'm cheating, obviously, I made sure I did enough damage to just do that. So this game can be pretty long. Like the game was decently long with me cheating to get through it, right? And that's a lot of it is because the story is pretty intense. And there's a lot of it, which is good, because that's why I'm playing these games. And the story was like, again, like what threw me off at first was like the voice acting was pretty bad, but then you either have like cutscenes, which are more rare, or you have these things where it's like they'll have like characters talking with like a portrait, and the portraits are very well done of the characters. Like there's this swarmy guy, Graham, who I loved, and he was always like teasing people and like laughing, and he's a centaur knight. Well, he shows up pretty quick. Max is the main character. Then there's Meryl, who's like the secondary main character, and then there's like Chiquitita Baron, who's a wolfman. Chiquitita is like a beast person, priest lady. There's bird people. They call them birdlings in this game. I'm trying to remember what their names are off the top of my head. One's like Klein, and one's Freya. There's a dragon, like Dairu. You can get Adam. Remember Adam? Remember Max from Shining Force? So I read somewhere that this was like a retelling of that story, and it is not a retelling of that story. It has like characters, but it's like so far off from like the original game that it's like mind-blowing. And like Max has a brother named Kane, and there's like a mask that like possesses him at some point. Spoiler alert, I guess. It's like a story video. But, so there's that, right? There's no Dark Dragon. Meryl sounded familiar, but I don't think there's any character named Meryl in the original game. There's Mariel. That's Graham's daughter. And all these characters, this is the part that cracks me up the most, they're all called forces. So Shining Force, Neo, if they have these things called force frames, and when someone gets the force frame, they can invest like force power and energy into it to like unlock greater abilities, and that's really how you make this game like stupid easy when you're cheating. Or I guess just if you're playing and you're grinding it out, but I really want to grind it out. Like this game's really like, you got to be grinding it out. There's even a point in the game near the end where one of the characters is like, hey, you can go do all this stuff. You should probably do it, because if you just try to take on the final dungeon, you're going to get killed. So you should really go grind it out. And it's like, thank you, game. Like, why? Why does it have to be like this? And in my head, I was like, thank God for cheats, man. Thank God this PS2 emulator is like, just has cheats like built in, essentially. Like I just found like a big folder somewhere and downloaded it and threw it in this thing. And it's just like, I didn't have to do anything. Like it took me a while to get it figured out with Shining Tears. But with this, I just like turned the game on, went to like the game menu, and it was like cheats, or the cheats were already in there because they're already in the folder, and it like automatically found them, and it was like, mwah, I love it. It's freaking fantastic. All right, I think that's all to talk about. But it's like Diablo, as in like you kill monsters. Sometimes it drops stuff. Sometimes the stuff's a little better. You can any weapon or any item you're using, you can upgrade to like level 99, which if you cheat correctly, you can just do that in one go. Some things need to be identified. Some things have different properties. And then you can like invest force crystals or whatever into things or into yourself. And then you just level up normally. So there's multiple ways to like get stronger. And like grinding, when you kill things, they almost always drop like energy, and gold is pretty plentiful, to be completely honest. And then these like force frame bonus things, they drop a lot too. The hardest thing was just finding gear, to be honest. Like sometimes, like I'm cheating, and I'm just like clearing out whole maps, and I would find like, sometimes I wouldn't even find ent items to like fill up my inventory. And the inventory is very small, and it includes all the bullshit like keys you pick up and everything. And the keys are kind of funny because there's like, it won't like consolidate them, but there's no like limit. So like you can go to the store and it's like, would you like to buy 11 keys or 3 keys? And if you're like both, so you buy the 3 keys and the 11 keys, and then the 3 keys take up a slot and the 11 keys take up a slot. But it's not because 11's the max, because later on you can get like 16 keys, and it's like, I don't understand why it's doing this. And then the same thing for these potions. So you have like essentially like Eustace flasks, right? That like every time you go back to, so you can use them to heal your, and when you use the potion, it heals like your whole party. And then when you go to like a save point, it will like recharge those healing things. But you can like if you found like the 3 potions, and then you found like 5 potions, they don't like add up. And then, so that was like, it was like super bizarre how that was working. Like I was like, wait, what? I didn't realize this like near the end of the game, because I'm cheating, so I'm not really paying that much attention. And at some point, I was trying to like level up some characters, like some of the assistant characters, because the cheating only affects max, so they could be like, they didn't just keep dying. And it was like, I was like ran out of potions real fast. I'm like, oh, because at some point I was like, oh, are they not infinite? I thought I was like recharging, but maybe it's like reloading from like the save game or from the inventory. And then it's like, oh no, it just is only showing like so many. Like, what the fuck? Like, oh my goodness. So kind of bizarre. And all the items are kind of like that. They're just like, the whole thing is like very interesting and whatnot. Okay. I think that is all. Yeah. And the game is like very linear. Like there's some like side paths you can go. Like at some point I found this level where even though I was cheating for like to have like infinite life or instant like recovery, I still died because guys were doing like, they were crit hitting me for like maximum damage, and I was like, shit. So I had to be like more careful. I'm like, oh, and the worst part about this game, the hands down the worst part, like all the janky PlayStation 1 like graphics and voice acting on like a PlayStation 2 game, or they're more like kind of funny than anything else. It's not, it's like, I can look at the screen, get what's going on, know where I need to go, know what guys are bad guys and what's happening. And then like the voice acting it almost becomes like charming at some point because it's like so funny. But the worst part is and one of the main reasons I was like, I'm going to cheat, this is ridiculous, is that if you go out in battle and you die, you don't, there's no resurrection, there's no like try the level again, you go to the last save spot. And so, like, I was just, like, cruising. I lost, like, an hour of game time because, like, why would I worry about saving? Like, I was save stating periodically, but, like, why would I... So, But then I go and I got like insta shot by this guy, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I'll just reload that up, and it was like the fuck. But and it's one of those things where it's like I knew it because when I first walked out of like the tutorial zone, I died like instantly, and it was like reload. And I was like, thank God I like reloaded, or I just saved before I came out here. But then it'd been a while, and I forgot, and I was like, oh god damn, that's right. This dumb fucking game like just is like game over, and you're like, the fuck. Send me back to town, you assholes! Like you cowards! Like the fuck is this? Or drop like the return stone and just send me back to the town and then make me come back and keep fighting. Like the fuck is this? Like you were like if you forgot to save, it's like fuck you. Or if you, it was like I was like oh my gosh. And the save stones, so you can only save at like these save stones that are like in town and other places, and they're around. There's quite a few of them, and then you have these things that will like recharge your healing flasks as well as like heal your whole party, right next to like almost all, if not all, the saving stones. All right. So that's the game. Okay. All right. So the game starts off and you Max, right? He's standing on the wall of like this big fortress, and then he gets called down from up there. The centaur guy's like, hey, what are you doing? Come down here. And they start discussing being a force. And about being a force is like mastery of skill and like strength and heart. And it's also about being diligent and doing what you're supposed to doing. And the centaur is the master of Max. And so Max is like, yeah, I got you, old man. I gotta go do something. So he kind of runs off, and he thinks about being a force. The forces are like chosen warriors. There's a bunch of them all over the place, and that he really, 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 really wants to become one. But first, he needs to find something, and he thinks about his big brother and how he's gone. And then he sees monsters, and then he does some fucking epic parkour down this wall, and we start the game. So we fight and we kill our way through town. Some of the guards are just like standing around, giving us like tutorial information, which is pretty funny, like not defending, not fighting monsters or any of that stuff. But that's okay. Max is here to clear it out. So he kills and kills and kills. And then we get over to Master Graham, and he's fighting like the boss monster or whatever. And then he asks about the monster gates. So we team up, we clear out the last of the monsters, and then we get a report. There's a couple injuries, but nothing crazy. Graham mentions that the moon has turned red. And that was a sign that the clan of the moon is returning, or that has returned. And then, again, this is Graham has this. He's so fucking smug. Like his his portrait is excellent. Like the portraits are well done, and they all got like a whole bunch of different like looks, and like I'm flustered, I'm angry, I'm surprised, I'm sad. And Grabs is like, he's always smug. It's like smug looking that way, smug looking that way, smug anger, smug sadness. Like he's got like this fucking what is it? L.O.A. Flynn. They old like Robin Hood from back in the day, like mustache, the goatees looking thing. It's pretty good. Anyway, and so everyone cheers Max because he destroyed the monster gate, and it's like hooray, yay! And then we learn that at this point that Max's dad brought him here to Fort Larkile, which is his name's Gaia, which is a chick's name, so I don't know why that. And then we also learn that this is like a border fort between different nations, that Max is from Greensleeves, which is where his dad currently is. Graham then tells Max that he has the blood of the Force, and that he's going to recommend that he become a Force because he's shown so much courage and strength and whatever. And that in 3 days an airship's going to be going from this fort back to Greensleeves, and that he wants Max to go back so he can do the ordeal or the trial of the Force. And then Graham reveals that he's a Force, which everyone knew. He reveals it to us pretty much. And that there's a few different forces here in Ukaritos, which is the country that like this Fort Lacriel and Greensleeves are in. And then he starts teasing him because he's smug as shit about this girlfriend he has back home named Meryl. And Max is like, "No, Meryl's just my friend." He's like, "Sure it is, brother. Sure it is." Because he's like, "Oh, you got a girl back home, huh? I bet you're excited to go back." And he's like, and Max is like, "Meryl's just a friend." And Grab's like, "You're the one who said Meryl, not me." Then it's like, let's toast to like your future as a Force user, or not even a Force user, just as a Force, with some honey latte, because he loves like sweet tea or sweet coffee or whatever. And then we get a sweet ass like anime cutscene. This is the first one, our journey back to Greensleeves on an airship. And Greensleeves looks like this bustling village that's built high up in the trees. As soon as we land, Meryl calls out to Max. We find out that Max has been gone for about 2 years. Wow. So they meet up and talk about the party they're going to have at Max's house and everything. And then they get into a discussion about how he's gotten taller. And then they're like checking each other out. And they both like blush a little bit. And so, yeah, there's definitely something there. But they're both like kind of nervous or shy about it. Because I think they're supposed to be like in their late teens. Because it's a Japanese RPG, right? But I don't remember anyone ever stating directly. There's a lot of like, oh, when you were young, this thing happened, and it's been 13 years. And I'm like, okay, so he's at least 13 years old, right? Yeah, Meryl's all right. Like, again, I like her character, but this game has absolutely no waifus in it. It's quite sad. Like, all the women are like fine looking, and the voice acting is not great, and none of their personalities are like that fantastic. Where I'm like, heck yeah, like definitely like we're missing Elwyn in this game for sure. But at that point, Max and Meryl head back to his place. So Max is like, cool, I'll see you at home. I'm gonna head home. So he kind of starts to wander off, and then Meryl like runs up. She's like, hey, you forgot all your luggage, you asshole. And so there's a lot of tropes in this. So it's the absent-minded, not amnesia like the Shining Tears, but this one's an absent-minded anime protagonist. Excellent. And then Meryl's like, they start talking about Meryl's like learned magic and cast magic now that she can help out and she can do stuff. And then Max checks in on Kane, his brother. And no one's heard from him in a long time. And Max then mentions that he has a letter for his dad and wants to know where he's at. And Meryl's like, oh, he's probably down at the training ground. Shit over there. Meryl joins the party at that juncture, and we can just kind of like explore part of the town. We can't go to like the part with all the shops and stuff, but there's some church, and we can like chat with people and whatnot. And before we head to the training ground, Meryl leaves the party. That happens a lot. You get characters like in and out of the party all the time, until like you get further into the game when they just like join and then hide out at the headquarters like a good old fashioned Shining Force game. Like, go to the headquarters, don't ever speak to me again. I think it's some confusing information because at some point, like I mentioned, it's like, oh, Gaia brought Max to Lacrimal Fort to be trained by Graham, and then here he talks about how he ran away from home to go train with Master Graham for 2 years. And then, so he's kind of nervous to see his dad and whatnot, because he wanted to be a force and his dad didn't want him to be a force and whatnot. So we head down to the training area. We see good old dad berating his soldiers, and then he's like, son! And they hug it out, which is nice, because the dad wasn't really that mad that he ran off. But then he then reads the letter, and then he's like, oh, you want to be a force, huh? And Graham thinks you're good enough to go. Let's duel. And so then we duel, and we get a new sword and whatnot, which is just sitting in a chest, like, right over there. Anyway, after the fight, a monster gate opens, and I was like, "Row!" So we fight some more, and then Gaia joins our team, and we fight, and then he uses, like, this Nova attack, or this, Gaia Nova attack. Yeah, it's named after him. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's right, he's a force as well. And then it's like, cool, let's go clear out the rest of the city from these monster gates and whatnot. So we run around, destroying all the monster gates, and then we learn that... this is very similar, like the monster gates opening and the moon turning red and all this stuff. This is very similar to a dark time that occurred 13 years ago, and that monsters haven't attacked any inhabited areas in 13 years, and such and such. So we also learned that Gaia apparently destroyed the Clan of the Moon 13 years ago, or so we thought. And so he's like, we need to go talk to your grandmama, Rebecca. She's the chairperson of the village. And it's like, sweet, let's go. And then we run into this like homie named this like guard on the way out, and he's like, oh, I felt so ashamed. I was a coward. When the monsters show up, I left. And then Gaia quizzes him about being like a holy guard. He's like, what does it mean to be a holy guard? Something. And we learned from this like quiz, which is an interesting way to do a tutorial, because it's like, we obviously have no fucking clue, but Max should know. He's lived in this town his whole life. But this guy has to like recite like the creed of the Holy Guard or whatever, which includes like, so there's these force crystals in Greensleeves, Queenitz, and Hyatt, which are like the two other like towns that are like really left in the world, and that it is the Holy Guard's duty to guard them, and that they protect from like the monsters returning and all this stuff. And then on the way up to Grandma Rebecca, we run into Meryl, and we have like an argument, and she's like, I need to go get herbs, you got to come with me and help. And you're like, hey, I'll go help you later, I gotta go talk to Grandma. And then we find like a library lady who gives us like more information about this world and whatnot. So from her we learned that like 13 years ago, the Clan of the Moon destroyed a force crystal, summoned the Dark Castle. They then destroyed 7 out of the 10 like major cities, wiped out races from the face of the earth, And that Gaia and Max's mother Maria fought them back and won. And then that left kind of the sages, including Rebecca, this king like Leibeheim over in Quincy, and then like Lord Chaos. Don't worry, he's a good guy. All right. Cool name, bro. So Lord Chaos over in Hyatt. And that these sages created some new crystals, and one in each one of these major towns, to seal the Dark Castle away. And that supposedly the Moon Clan was destroyed, and then the crystals were put in these sanctuaries and protected by the Holy Guard. And it's like, okay, cool, that's all very good information to have. So then Max and Grandma have a good old time laughing and chatting and making fun of his dad and stuff. It's like very, very realistically like written, like grandma's grandson action. Like they are loving life. And then they start talking about the ordeal and how he's ready for the ordeal. And Rebecca's like, yeah, I can see that. And then Gaia's like, no. And then Rebecca's like, stop being such a stick in the mud. And he's like, Dad. And he's like, you can join the Holy Guard, but you're not going to be a force. No force ordeal for you. So then Max like goes off. And then he goes off, not like he leaves. He goes off against his dad, and his dad's like, "You're not ready. You have a fatal flaw. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I gotta go get a report from the guard. So bye." And then Grandma is like, "Hell no, family's important. You need to stay here and hang out with your son." Oh, no. Gaia wants to give a report to Grandma, and she's like, fuck you, get out of here. I don't need more of your sass. I'm going to hang out with my grandson. Now scoot on out of here. So Gaia's like, yes, my lord. And then Max is like, I have a fatal flaw? And then he gets very sad eponymous about it. And then Grandma is like, no, Max, your flaw, this flaw that your dad is talking about is also your greatest asset. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. You need to figure out what it is on your own. Don't worry, someone just straight up fucking tells us later on. We don't have to find out shit. And she says, once we can find out our fatal flaw, she'll let us take the ordeal to become a force. And she'll kind of force Gaia to let us do that. Our talk then turns to Cain, who's Max's brother. And Cain was 15 years old. He was the youngest person ever to become a force. He was 15 years old when he became a force. And also he went missing, like shortly thereafter. And it was right after he was suppressing like an uprising. And then for 3 years, he's been missing. So he's been gone for about 3 years now. So he'd be like, I don't know, at least 18. And then Max is like, I have a strong desire to find my brother, and I would sacrifice a lot to do that. Is that my fatal flaw? And she's like, no, it's something else. Max gets real calm, and then she calms him down. And then talk turns to Meryl. Grandma, much like Graham, like teases him about him and Meryl and their like relationship, that they like are like, no, we're just friends, I promise. Even though we like hang out all the time and hold hands and like give sweet kisses to each other on the cheek. And then she talks about how Meryl's learned a lot of cooking from Rebecca, who's I guess one of the greatest chefs in the whole town. And then Grandma's like, when you get married to that girl, you're going to have such delicious cooking. I'm making sure of that. And then Max is like, what are you talking about? We're just buddies. And then Grandma's like, ooh, take care of her. And then we learn that Meryl, 13 years ago, during the previous uprising, lost her family in a battle with the Clan of the Moon. And that she was pretty much raised by Grandma Rebecca this whole time. So she really encouraged us to take care of her. So we head back to Max's place, where we find a note. And it's like, oh, hey, homie, I got tired of like waiting for you. So I went out to get herbs and shit down in this area. And so it took me a while to find it, because this place is like a fucking maze. And a lot of levels are like, you get like vague directions. It's like, oh yeah, take this elevator and go south. And then you're like, okay, here's an elevator, and you take that. And I wandered around for like 15 minutes, and I was like, it is not down here. So then I went up and I was like, there must be another elevator. And then eventually I found that other elevator, and it was like, god damn it, game. And the game has a bunch of signposts to help. So once you kind of like, you got to just be like, okay, they said go southeast, just head southeast. And if you get turned around, just like after you get like turned around, just head southeast some more. And then like just look for these fucking signposts, because they're really going to be the key to like figuring out how to get around these like dungeons, if you will, even if they're outdoor dungeons. So after a while, we find her. She's like, we find some monsters near the herb garden, and then we, once we take care of them, we find Meryl just beating the shit out of some monsters with like her staff and doing magic and stuff. And the monster looks so helpless, and it's pretty adorbs. And then she joins us, and she's like, hey, I was worried about you and the monsters. And you're like, what? I was worried about you. And it's like, teehee, and, place, I'm blushing, yada, yada, yada. And then she mentions that the monsters destroyed this herb garden and that she was concerned about this, so she started like a secret herb garden somewhere else where the monsters couldn't go. And we're like, oh yeah, where's that? And she's like, in the sanctuary. And Max is like, oh, we're not supposed to go to the sanctuary. Only forces are allowed to go to the sanctuary. And she's like, it's cool. We used to sneak in there all the time as kids. I know we're not allowed, but like whatever. And then Grandma has a key, so I just stole it. And it's like, okay. So we're like, all right, let's just go get these herbs and get the fuck back out of here. So we go down to the sanctuary. And we're like fucking around in there, and we see these like crazy egg-looking things. We're like, I don't know what that is. That's weird. And then we see the force crystal, and it's like, wow, it's so mesmerizing and beautiful. And then we start reminiscing, like Max and Meryl start reminiscing some more. They gather the herbs, and then they head back home. And on the way, we run into a guard. And he's like, hey, where are you guys at? And she's like, oh, we're getting herbs. And he's like, I thought the herb garden was destroyed. And she's like, no, there was enough left. And then Max is like, oh, yeah, it was, but... And she's like, shut the fuck up, Max. And so it goes on like this for a bit. It's like a comedy sketch. Like, there's like 3 or 4 times he almost spills the beans that they snuck into the sanctuary. And Meryl has to keep being like, shut the fuck up, Max. Like, keep your damn mouth shut. Anyway, so she goes and spices up her soup pretty good, and it's fucking delicious. Everyone has a good time. So there's some chitter chatter about random nonsense. Guy is there. We talk about Graham drinking his honey latte, and then eventually talk turns to Kane and how he left the fort and went to Fedland. But after he went to Fedland, he like never returned. After the meal, Guy calls us out, and he's like, "I know you guys were in the sanctuary." And like, "Oh, how'd you know?" And he gives us like some old guilt trip and punishment, and the crystal protects the whole world, and the punishment's going to be 2,000 practice swings. And Mac's like, I'm going to do all 4,000 for me and Meryl. And then Gaia's like, oh yeah, I meant 2,000 between the two of you, but if you want to do 4,000 by yourself, that's totally fine. And he's like, ha 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 ha. And it was and then everyone laughs, except Max, who just kind of sadly laughs since he got caught. And then at that point, Max is like, well, since it's not a secret anymore at all, I have a question. What are those fucking eggs down there? They're Legion's eggs. What's Legions? Legions are just the name of monsters in this game. Like Legions with an S, even when it's singular. Yep. And Legions were summoned by the Clan of the Moon 13 years ago, and they're kind of like helped the Clan of the Moon like destroy all this stuff and whatnot. And the guy is like, yeah, but whatever, they're just like stones down there now. It doesn't matter, it doesn't mean anything. And then Meryl and Max are like, I don't know, man, they look like they were moving and stuff. And Guy's like, well, that shouldn't be happening. And at that juncture, a guard rushes in. He's like, legions have returned. The eggs have hatched in the sanctuary. And it's like, well, that was convenient. We were just talking about that. So Guy's like, I'm going to go take care of this. You guys wait here and stay behind. And then he leaves. And then Meryl and Max have like a hearty laugh together and like, let's go. So they run out and they try to fight legions. And then Meryl's like, I don't know, man. If we fight monsters and stuff, but these legions, they are only force users, or like only the forces can fight them. So we should probably avoid them. And then Max is like, no, we got this. And we do. Because they're not any harder than anything else I've fought in this game so far. So they're like slightly more tough, I guess. So we kill our way through the legions to where Gaia is. And then we tell him we're here to help. And then we failed some legions already. So he's like, all right. So then he joins the party. So now there's Gaia, Meryl, and Max on the team. And Gaia does like 1,000 times more damage than Max and Meryl, like no joke. Like Max is doing like 24 damage, and Gaia does like 24,000 damage. And he like literally, these gates, like I said, you have to like kill the monsters around the gate, and then you get at the gate. And Gaia literally just runs up to the gate and destroys it in one shot. And I was like, damn, that's good to know. So when I cheat, I can make sure that happens, which was very good to know. Anyway, he's baller as shit. So we kill our way all the way to the sanctuary and to the crystal. Oh, and the last time we were at the crystal, Meryl and Max heard like a strange voice, and it was like, oh, you've come, or like, finally you've come, or something. And so then we get back to the sanctuary. Meryl is like, I have a very eerie feeling about everything that's going on here. And then this like crazy masked hombre shows up, and it's like, hey, it's Kane, obviously. The game doesn't say that. I say that in my head. I'm like, oh, that must be Kane. And then, oh yeah, I have some notes here about how like the game kind of it rips off the beginning, right? So you have a redheaded protagonist named Max. He's got a brother named Kane. He's got a master who's like a centaur, and that's pretty much where the connection ends. But it's like, okay, cool. They took like that initial idea, just made like a completely different game, and then threw like Shining and Force in there for good measure. Anyway. So the mask guy's like, oh, look at you. And then he tells us he's the voice we heard earlier. And then we get a cutscene. It's like, again, it's like an excellent like animated cutscene, like an anime style. And it's the masked man goes to destroy the crystal. Oh my gosh, excuse me. And then Gaia like jumps in the way and starts fighting with him, and he calls in the Clan of the Moon. And then they do like the samurai duel thing where it's like, or Ninja Gaiden thing where it's like they're standing on like opposite ends and they both like have their swords in their sheaths and they're like, go! And then they like rush at each other like real quick and it's like, ching! And then they stand there for a second. But then, oh no, Gaia lost. And then Max is going to be next. But Gaia gets up and he blasts the man with like Gaia with some super blast. And the mask gets broken a little bit. And then Gaia's like, Kane! And then Gaia gets blasted again. And then Kane's like, oh, fuck. And he like leaves. And then Gaia's laying there dying. And he's like, please, son, take this. You've earned it. I'm sorry I held you back for so long. And he gives us his force frame. The force frame is what we need to be a force. So with this thing, we can now go and do the ordeal of the force as this. I thought the crystal was like part of the ordeal, but it is not. The crystal is there to protect the Earth, right? Or the planet on which this game takes place. And then he mentions that the fatal flaw that Max has is that he's too kind. His kindness of his heart is too strong. And then Max is going to need to let go of his kindness and kill his brother Kane. And then he's like, you are a force now. And then Meryl's like, I can't stop him bleeding. And then it's like, yes, Kane had a cursed blade. And I'm like, cool, he does. Fine. And then Kane, like, we hear him laughing. And he's like, I'm going to leave you some presents. And he summons a whole bunch of, like, bosses with their minions. And so we kill all of them. And then after that, we're meeting with Rebecca. And then we're like, yeah, the guy was probably Kane. And then, because he also used the Gaia Nova attack that Gaia uses, which only Gaia and Kane knew how to use and did use. And it's like, why would he destroy the crystal? And then Meryl mentions that when the crystal is destroyed, he said that it is the first one down, and that there must be the other two. Crystals are the two places that he also wants to destroy. So then we all discuss like the Clan of the Moon using the power of the moon to summon legions, and how Rebecca worked with Gaia and Graham to push them back like 13 years ago. And then we also learned that Maria was also a force as well. And it's like the clan is not a race. It's actually like anybody who like accepts like the darkness of the moon or something are now like members of the Clan of the Moon. And so at that point, Grandma's like, you need to go rest. And then Max is like kind of fucking losing it. But Meryl like takes care of him, gives him some encouraging words. Max like cries it out because he just watched his dad die. And they rest at his place. And the next day, Grandma's like, you look like shit. And it's like, Grandma, I've been crying all night because my dad just died in front of me. Fuck you. And then it's like, Max is like, and she's like, oh yeah, you got more wrinkles, you old broad. Oh, it's so good. Rebecca then hands Max some letters and is like, hey, I need you to deliver these, and I need you to head through the fort, give one to Graham, and then take one to Hyatt and to Quincy so that they can all know what's going on. The hardest one's going to be Hyatt. Apparently it's across the ocean. And we can't take the airship because the airship got destroyed in this whole battle. Meryl then insists that she come along too, and Max is like, I can't protect you. If I can't protect you, you need to stay here and whatnot. Especially because we got to travel by foot to Lacriel, and then we're going to have to find a way to like fly over the fucking ocean to get to Hyatt. And then Meryl's like very insistent, so finally Rebecca's like, listen here, and she takes off her like a force frame because she was a force as well. Like everyone's a fucking force in this game. And then and then gives it to Meryl. And now Meryl's a force, hooray! Because she also like suffered with Max on this whole thing, and so she's clearly prepared to be a force user as well. And it's like her daughter, pseudo daughter, essentially, since she raised her. And that Meryl has been in training with Rebecca for the past 3 years while we were gone as well. So she has the power, and it's going to be great. But the force frames don't carry on like the force powers you included with them. So you have to like start from scratch all over again, which wah. So there's like a force, she tells us about like a force shop in town that we got to go to, and we take like force crystals and blah, 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 blah. So of course, okay, as I mentioned before. And then this is when she gives us a teleportation amulet, and it also works as a transmitter so that we'll be able to talk to her and other forces, as well as connect with the headquarters, which is not unlocked at this point. It gets unlocked later when we get like a fourth character, and we can only have 3. Okay. And so there's like, I think we're just about the end of like the tutorial of the game, to be honest. Let's see. So then Rebecca tells us more about the crystals and how there used to be all these crystals to like seal the Dark Castle. If they all get destroyed, they're going to release that. She also can't send carrier pigeons to like these other castles, which is another form of communication that they had, because they're all dead as well. So it's like, all right, cool. And so this is where I walk out and get murdered immediately. Like, no joke. Like, I was doing fine. Like, I was just going to play, and I was like, I don't need to cheat if I don't need to. And then I walk out of, like, the town, right? And it's not even like I'm not supposed to be there. Like, I'm definitely supposed to be there. And I get mugged immediately and die. And I was like, all right, fuck this game. Time to cheat. So that's what we did. All right. So, and I don't even cheat correctly. I cheat like halfway there, and so I'm still like not that strong at this point. Later on, I realized I needed to like upgrade my force, but I had to get these items first, and then I realized there's cheats. It just gives me infinite of those, and then I just like slammed abilities into that, which was pretty good. So we go out, we just kill the shit out of everything at this point. We're just walking around, finding our way. Meryl's very impressed by like the fort. Once we get there, she's like, wow, it's fucking huge. And then while we're standing looking at it, there's an explosion, and we're like, oh no, let's go. And so we crush a whole bunch of monsters that are standing outside the fort. And then once they're all cleared out, they open the gates, and Graham's there, and he's like, you're a force now, I love it, ha 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 ha, you brought your wife, ha 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 ha. Graham's so fucking good. And the Max gets super embarrassed, and so does Meryl, and then they talk about how Gaia died, and Graham's pretty sad about that in like a smug, weird way. And talks about the crystal being destroyed, and then we give him the letter from Grandma, and the letter discharges Graham from being a captain of the Border Knights because they're still under her like reign or whatever, and that she orders him to follow us and to help us protect the rest of the crystals. And then his children, they're acting like spoiled children. The guards in the fort are like, "What are we gonna do without you? We need a force user or something." And then Graham like chides all of them and tells them to fucking grow the fuck up. And that we got to go do this, and they're like, all right, and they have like a nice farewell or whatever, and it's like, all right, next course of action is that we need to head to Fedlin to protect that crystal. So we go through a cave, we get to this overlook, it's really beautiful, and Meryl's like, oh, I loved it, it's so nice, and Grab's like, gets nostalgic, he's like, yes, 13 years ago it was the same. Even though there was war, there was so much beauty in the world and whatnot. And I make it sound kind of silly because I'm like an idiot, but it was pretty good. Like, again, the voice acting like throws you off, but the writing's like pretty good. Like and this is like the English. The Japanese must be even better. Like there was like I didn't get any like translation or what is that thing called when they localize? And there was like no localizing issues. The game's just like it's smooth. Everything makes sense. Like things that like don't make sense like make sense later. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like very good writing in this game. Like shockingly good writing. Anyway. And then, Graham talks more about like 13 years ago and the Clan of the Moon and how they tried to destroy the world. And there were so many people lost and the gates and the legions and endless enemies and all this stuff. And then he talks about how the Clan of the Moon is not even the problem. It's the legions. The legions are the true source of destruction in the world. And that the monsters fall through from like another dimension using like the eye of the moon or some shit. And it's like there's literally the red moon has like an eye in it. It's crazy. And that the Dark Castle can create even more summoned monsters. And that it wasn't destroyed, but it was just like sent to another dimension, and that the crystals lock it in that other dimension, and that if the crystals are destroyed, then it's definitely going to return, which is like ruh-roh. And then Max is about to reveal to Graham that the masked man is Kane, his brother, but then he stops himself and is just like, and then Graham's like, you got something to say, boy? And then we hear like a loud roar, and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of monsters. He's like, all right, let's go. And then we enter like another cave, and Meryl's like, God, it stinks in here. We really have to go through here? And Graham's like, yes, it is the only way. And that these monsters are new because they cleared all this out, so this must be legions because they've done a good job like clearing the shit out of that. Meryl doesn't want to go. Her and Max bicker a little bit. Graham laughs, talks about they're like a married couple, just like Guy and Maria. He then laughs some more and tells Max that though he's young, he should stay true to his heart. And then Max is like super confused, and Graham like touches his nose and winks at him. And then teases him back, and he talks about like, oh, you need your nanny back, and he's like, what do you mean my nanny or my tutor? And it's like, you don't remember that silver guy Adam? And Max is like, I kind of remember Adam. And hey, it's Adam. Yes, another reference back to Shining Force. But he's like, I don't really remember anything before Green Sleeves. And Graham's like, yeah, you were raised somewhere else, and then Adam kind of raised you while your parents are off doing stuff, and he's out there somewhere probably. He probably is. In fact, he is. You can get him as like an optional character. And he laughs and then says like, I'll tell you more about it someday, and he never does. Then we leave the cave, and Meryl gets a little melancholic. She's like, I've never left home before. And Max is like, you got this, babe. We're going to do this together. And then Graham is caught staring off in the distance, and they're like, hey, you okay, old man? And he's like, oh, it's my daughter, Mariel. She's in Ranor, which is the country where Hayat's at, which is where Lord Chaos rules. And she's a Force, too, and captured the Holy Guard over there. And he's like, we're going to visit Aranor, I'm assuming. So, we'll see her soon, so I'm very excited. And then Max is like, "Oh, is she nice?" And he's like, "Oh, you want to get with my daughter as well? You already have Meryl." And Max is like, "No, I don't want to get with your daughter." And then Graham's like, "What's wrong with my daughter?" It's all pretty good. It's so much teasing. So after we leave this cave, we're now officially in Fedland, which is like a snow-covered land, which is where... Is Fedland the name of the town? I get confused, like what's the name of the town and the name of the country. I think Fedland's the name of the country. And that there's a bunch of races here that Max has never seen before, so Graham reminds him to be like on his best behavior and not say anything stupid or whatnot, and then be very cordial and whatnot. So we head through this super large like snowfield, and at the end, Graham gets pretty mad at himself because we fell into like a trap and we're surrounded, and he let his guard down, and he's like, oh fuck. And so Graham is like, I'm going to charge ahead. So he rushes ahead to cause confusion. And that leads to like this cool, like our another anime cutscene where Meryl and Max are fighting back to back. And then this like Beast Girl comes out and she's like, hiya, let me help. And she jumps out. She's got like floppy ears and like a cute little like priest outfit and whatnot. Let's see. And then she's yelling at the monsters. She falls in the snow, like comic relief. And then she starts berating the monsters. And then she joins the party for like this brief battle. We gotta like destroy all the monster gates, take care of that. Afterward, Graham rolls back in and he's like, I'm so proud of you, you won. And then Max is like, oh, the only reason we were saved is because this girl showed up. And the girl introduces herself as Chiquitita of Cantore. And Cantore is like her little beast person town. And that she came here to rescue us. But then we ended up rescuing her because she fell in the snow. And it's like, ha ha ha, hilarious. So then Chiquitita recognize, she like looks at Meryl and she's like, and Meryl's like, can I help you? And she's like, I don't know, you look familiar. And then Chiquitita mentions that she's a force, that she got her force frame from Joseph, who's her grandfather. And Graham's like, Joseph, I know Joseph. Oh, that's awesome, let's go see this homie. And it's like, how's he doing? He's like, oh, he's ruling the town now and he put me in charge of this and whatnot. And then they, let's see. Oh, and then Chiquitita is like, where are you guys going? And Max is about to explain when they hear more explosions. From Cantore Village, oh no! And so she leaves the party to run off and like make sure everyone's okay there, like her husband and all her children and whatnot. And then we find some monsters attacking the gate to the village. And so we destroy them. And, but before we destroy them, Graham's like, hey, I know last time I just charged off like a reckless fool, but this time we actually need a plan. And so he tells Chiquitita to do like a little sneak and like a side passage to get into the village, and so she can attack from that side, and then we're going to attack from the outside and like pincer him, and we're like, oh, that sounds good. And then that tactic was completely unnecessary because by the time Chiquitita like gets out of the town after she snuck through the tunnel, we've destroyed all the monsters and monster gates, and so no one says anything about it. It's just like cool. So then we head inside and Joseph comes up and he's like, the heroes of the day, I'm so proud of all of you. Graham, it's good to see you. Who are these fine people? And then he stops and looks at Marilyn and he's like, and then Graham's like, can we please go inside? It's fucking cold out here. And Joseph's like, oh yeah, sorry, my bad. And so we head in, and then we see Chiquitita getting harassed by some children of the village, and then Meryl's like, oh, these kids are so cute. And then Chiquitita's like, grandfather, I remember that girl was raised here when she was little. Or there was the human girl who was raised here, had the same eyes and hair and everything as Meryl. And then the Joseph is like, yes, I think this is the girl that raised us. And it's like, what? She was raised in this village? So Joseph and Chiquitita are talking about this girl that was staying with them, this human girl. And so Meryl, of course, is curious. And if you're functioning with more than like 2 brain cells, you know this girl is definitely Meryl when she was a little girl. But Joseph tells us that Gaia, however you pronounce his dumb name, brought this girl to like stay with them for about 6 months. And then he came back to get her and took her off later. And Meryl's like, oh, hot damn, that was me. And it's like, yeah, of course. And then Meryl wants to know more about her past. Like maybe someone can tell her where she was born or who her parents were or anything like that. And then at this juncture, Max accidentally, because I guess he was trying to hide it, reveals to Joseph that Gaia is his father. And also that he's dead. Which is kind of sad. And then Joseph's mentioning how that guy was like the greatest force ever, and he like saved these people, and when he was a force, because Chiquitita took his force frame, that he did such good work, and he helped with like the castle over here and whatnot. And then at that point, we're all being kind of sad about Gaia being dead still. Some chica rolls up screaming, and it's a girl. We find out that a girl named Chip left the village through the tunnels, and that she was like sneaking around and screwing around like little kids do, and then monsters picked her up and ran her off. And we're like, Chiquitita Tita is like, I gotta go, I gotta protect them. And we're like, oh, we'll go with you and we'll help out. And like, yay. And then Joseph tells us that the monsters have been held up in Cascade Castle for a long time. And he's like, where's that? And he's like, oh, it's just over there. And so off we go. And as we head out, Max and Graham discuss how Gaia and Joseph love keeping secrets for Max. Like, they're definitely like, they're telling stuff. Like, Gaia did this all the time, but then Joseph is also like not saying the full truth. And Graham's like, we must have a reason. Like, let's just, he'll tell us when he's good and ready or whatever. Because they're definitely good men. But the castle's pretty close. It's like a shot away, just like it's like right over there. And it's also pretty big. So at this point, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the dungeons in this game. And when I say dungeon, like this game is, if you've ever played, like Diablo is the most popular one, but Path of Exile or what was the other one called? That was kind of big. I don't remember. Anyway, so Path of Exile and Diablo are like the two biggest like action role-playing games that this is like seriously cribbing off. And I say that because so it doesn't have procedurally generated dungeons per se. Some dungeons I feel like are procedurally generated, especially later on in the game. But it's like if you've played Diablo, particularly Diablo 2, this is what you're playing. Now it's different enough. Like there's just like loot. Like loot just drops all the time. It's random loot, and you can upgrade the loot, and you can identify it. Right? There's like a teleportation thing. You can like activate waypoints essentially to teleport back to headquarters and stuff. You get like a certain amount of potions you can use. You have like a limited inventory space. Like this is like a Shining Force version of Diablo. And like the Shining Tears and Shining Wisdom. Well, Shining Wisdom is more like a Zelda game. So it's really like Shining Tears is also kind of this style of RPG, like action role-playing game. But it plays so much differently, I gotta say. And you have control over your other characters and stuff. Like this straight up plays like Diablo. Like you have these side characters that will come join you, but you have like limited control over them. Like you can't equip them with new things or anything. You can just like level them up, and then later on you can promote them. So it's one of those things where it's like I'm not a super big fan of these style of games, to be completely honest. Like I played all 3 of the Diablos. I never touched the 4th one because by Diablo 3 I was kind of like Diablo 2 was peak, and this has only gotten worse since then. And this is not even like a genre I'm like super big fan of or whatever. I just like the lore. Like I read a bunch of Diablo books. They're pretty good. Anyway, so if you're into that style of game, I would say this is actually a pretty good representation, to be completely honest. Like it's easy to load up. It's easy to play on the PS2 emulator, the PCS X2. You can cheat if you want, like I did. But it's just like that's the game, and the story is actually pretty good as we're going along. Like everything makes sense. I like all the characters. They're all interesting and different in their own unique way. It's a little cliche, like stuff that happens. You're like, well, obviously that's going to happen, or like someone brings something up. You're like, well, this is the obvious conclusion, right? But aside from that, it's just like a nice little story. It's pretty fun. Like I actually care about the characters, despite their like almost terrible voice acting for the most part. Like Graham's got a pretty good voice actor, but some of them are pretty bad. Anyway, so getting back to the story, so we hit up Cascade Castle. It's pretty big. Graham calls it out. He calls it the Castle of Rebellion, because this is where the whole thing like 13 years ago kicked off. It's like the Clan of the Moon was here, and they were like doing some shady shit because they made an alliance. And this Cain came over here at some point to like help deal with this, and this is where he was lost. And they're like, well, did Cain really lose? Did he really die? And it's like, well, that was just a rumor, but who knows, right? And this is, so 13 years ago, this is the castle where everything kicked off, where the Clan of the Moon did. And then like 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, I can't remember which one, off the top of my head, this is where Cain got lost, because then there was like some more stuff going on, and they're like, oh, there was some more shady stuff with like the Clan of the Moon maybe arising again. So he came over here to take care of that. And ever since that point, anyway, oh, sorry. Read the notes. Yeah. So then 3 years ago, this is where people got killed, and then after they got killed, all these monsters like moved in, and monsters, rebels, and outlaws. So, okay. So once we're inside the castle, we get accosted by like these 4 gentlemen. There's Skeleton King, Phantom, Lesser Vampire, and Skeleton. And they're like, oh, we captured Tita because she ran off ahead of us, and Chip, and they're going to be married off to like our master, and the master's going to eat them. Ho 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 ho. And then we're like, no, we're going to mess you like something, and they're like, there's nothing you can do. And then the Skeleton King's like, hold up, let's hear what they got to say. And so Meryl's like, we want Chip back. And then Max demands Chiquitita back as well. And then let's see, oh, and then they're like, yeah, but no, the master's going to marry Chiquitita, and she's down for it. And they're like, no, she would never do that. That's completely ridiculous. And then And then someone's like, "Hey, you, Meryl, why don't you get married to the master?" And the other two are like laughing and like, "Oh, you got an ugly face. He would never go for that." And they're like, "Oh," and then Meryl gets super pissed off because she's like, "What do you mean I'm not good looking?" It's more of they use negatives in this, but that's pretty much what she's saying. And then Max is like, "Oh, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what they're saying." And she's like, "What are you saying?" And he's like, "Nani desu ka?" And obviously, because they're calling her ugly, and he's like, "Well, yeah, that's what they said." And she's like, "Do you agree with them?" And it's like, bitches, man, goddamn, he's just a dumb idiot. Anyway, and then they're like, as part of the marriage, oh, I already said this, as part of the marriage ceremony, the master's going to eat him. And Meryl's like, "That's not what marriage is." And they're like, "Whatever, we're going to have some fun with you." And then like a bell rings, and they're like, "Ooh, four more rings, and the ceremony will begin. If only you could do something about it." And then they all like take off. So then we have to like kill our way through this whole thing. And it's an interesting dungeon. There's like some places where we have to use levers to like open doors and whatnot. Then finally we get to like the top floor. And in the top floor, there's a doorway with 4 seals on it. And obviously the 4 seals are one for each of these kind of like mini bosses. So we got to kill our way around this level, find each mini boss. They have their own little thing, and then we kill them, and it opens the door. Let's see. They've sealed the door. Bell rings. Oh, and every time we kill one, a bell rings. So first we find the Skeleton King, kill him. Lesser Vampire, kill him. And every time we kill one of these guys, like I said, a bell goes off. Then Skeleton Archer, and then lastly we get the Phantom. And apparently he stinks because they walk in, and like with the rest of them, there's some banter. Like you walk in, and the Skeleton King's like, "Oh, so this is the time. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh, I'm so strong." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll defeat you with the power of shonen anime." And then but with the Phantom, they walk in like, "Oh, god damn, it stinks in here. What the fuck?" And then he's like, "I will get you." And then it's like, okay. Anyway, so once we unseal the door and the last bell rings, we like rush back over so we can stop the marriage before it goes down, and Chiquitita and Chip get eaten. And we run into an orc champion, and he's like trying to force Chiquitita to say her vows, and she's like, "Hell nah, bro." And so we arrive just in time, and he's like, "Ah, good, some entertainment before I have my snackopotamus with this marriage." And so he's like, "Chiquitita, go change your clothes." And she's like, "Go fuck yourself." And then the orc runs forward, and he uses some magic, summons a bunch of dudes, and then casts like a grow spell on himself. And then he's invincible till we take out a couple of his like minions. And then we kill him, and he calls on the strength of like the one true god right as he dies. And Max is like, "Fuck yo, god." And he grabs like, "I'm very concerned about this one true god thing," and then it never comes up again in this game. So clearly there was some mistranslation of localization, because they were probably talking about something else, or like the master, or like the darkness, or whatever. But it's like, one true god, the fuck. Anyway, Graham also mentions that he's concerned because people were saying the same thing like 13 years ago, and so he therefore must be a servant of the Clan of the Moon. Anyway, Chiquitita is not here. Apparently she's somewhere else, so we have to look around for a little bit. Meryl eventually finds this thing on the wall that she can open up, and that lets us into another room. Oh, also she finds this painting on the wall, and she's like, "These people look really familiar. I wonder who they are." And then Kane shows up, and he's like, "Aha, they were the owners of the castle who died 13 years ago, thanks to Kane." And I'm like, "Wait, you're Kane?" And then and then he's like, "Oh, you killed my playthings. Very good. I'm surprised. I thought you were going to head straight to Kinitz." And then he taunts Graham some, and he's like, "You thought you killed the Clan of the Moon, but you didn't." Ooh. And then if you did, how could I be a member of them? Because Graham's like, "No, we destroyed the Clan of the Moon." He's like, "Oh yeah, but I'm a Clan of the Moon, so fuck you. You didn't do shit." And then he starts talking about the portrait some more, and he says they were killed for being members of the Clan of the Moon. And he mentions that the war with the Clan of the Moon was... the Clan of the Moon was just like hated, but that at some point they weren't as hated. They were just kind of like people that exist and love darkness, I guess. And that 17 years ago there was a moon baby, or a Clan of the Moon baby, that was born. That is like the beginning of the end of all this thing. And obviously Meryl is the Clan of the Moon baby. It's just by the way they talk about stuff. And she was born 17 years ago, so there you go, that's her. Anyway. But that the people banded together, and so 17 years ago there was a baby that was born, I'm sorry, and they killed that baby, and then there was another baby born, but this time it was in this castle, and they were like nobles to this Clan of the Moon people, and that was 13 years ago, so Meryl's 13 years old, and that's what started this whole like battle business. And that because of the royal blood they didn't kill the baby. And then Kane's like, "Meryl, you should come with me and you can find out more." And she's like, "The fuck are you talking about?" "No." And he's like, "All right, teach you more later." So he nopes out. And then Max and Graham are super pissed about this whole situation. And Meryl's like, guys, you need to calm down. We're here to find Chiquitita. And that's when she finds the secret. And it leads, the secret passage leads upstairs where we find Chiquitita. And Chip is her well. And Chip's like, my mom's always looking out for me, so I'm fine. And we're like, Nani desu ka? Because, yep, Chip is Chiquitita's mom. And she's also married to this guy, Marol, who's like over in Quincy studying to be a doctor, I think. And then Meryl gets distracted walking in this room because she's like, wow, it looks really familiar here. And again, like obviously because this was like the place she was born. Anyway, we head back to Contore. When we get like this great big homecoming, all these kids are super happy, everything. Joseph's ever grateful. We have like a feast and whatnot. He thanks us for saving his family and relieving them of like the monsters who kept bothering them from the castle because now they're dead. So now they won't pester him anymore. And then we find out that Chip is, it seems like Chip is not actually Chiquitita's like biological child, but that there's been so many orphans because of the monster attacks continuously. Like the whole village has like essentially adopted all the children from like the people that were died. And so Chiquitita she's like the mom of like 10 kids or whatever, but they're all like adopted kids. At that point, just like Rebecca ordering Graham, Joseph orders Chiquitita to come to Quincy with us and to help us as she's a force and we're joining up forces and we'll be so strong and whatnot. And then at that point, Graham's like, let's go back to Greensleeves. We gotta learn about something new. So the new power or something, and we head back, and then it's like the elevator in the middle of town that like didn't work before, and people are like, I don't know where that goes, but it works now. And then it didn't work before because now we need it because we're only allowed to have 2 helpers in our party, and now we have 3 people. So now they have to unlock the headquarters. And they actually have a pretty interesting justification for this situation because it's like, well, why can't we all travel together? And sometimes games are just like hand wave it off. But in this game, it's very specific. It's like, all right, so now that we have enough people to run the headquarters, we can do that because we need a reserve person in the headquarters to run like the warping and the communication system and stuff. So like they can use the power, any force can use the power of the force, not to be confused with Jedi Force, to maintain like the magical powers needed for like the warping back and forth here. And then it has like an unlimited communication, which is like another like it's actually like very well written in-game lore that like we can like be in a dungeon or be somewhere where an event happens and everyone can communicate about it, right? So we're not missing out on like people's interpretations. Now in some cases it seems like the person in your party is going to say something different because we only get like the people in our party making commentary, but generally, especially for the big events, everybody kind of like chimes in, and that's because this thing has like some sort of magic device that connects all the forces so they can all communicate with each other as long as there's someone here in like the headquarters. And it's like the more people that are here, the more powerful and something. It's kind of hand wavy, but I appreciate they put some effort into like explaining why like I can't just take everybody with me, which to me is just like, oh, that was unnecessary, but like honestly I appreciate that. And so now we open up like the warp gate system. So we always have the Ring of Return or the Rock of Return or whatever it is, which is like an unlimited teleport scroll or town portal scroll. But now we also have these warp gates that we can unlock, like, and they're all over. So all the major towns have one. All the major like not all the kind of like optional dungeons at the end of the game have one. When you can just find them like in random places. So like you'll just be out on a map and there'll be a dungeon that you can't get into yet because you need like a certain item to open it. But next to those, there's always like a warp, so you can like open those up. And even if you're just grinding out in like the regular world dungeons and not like the special in-game dungeons, you can teleport back and forth pretty easily. Now you can always use the Rock of Return to go to one place and back, but let's say like especially near the end of the game, there's like some side quest things, and so it's much better that as you're going through the game, you just unlock these like warp tunnels while you're like in those level appropriate areas anyway. And that way, when you get to the end of the game, it's a lot less like running around. And I did not do that, partially because I was cheating, so I didn't need to grind shit. So I was just like running through levels. But when I got to the end of the game, and it's like, oh, to promote everybody, you have to go to like these certain like optional dungeons. Then it's like it took a lot to like meander about and like track them down, because I had to pretty much just replay the levels because I just initially ran through them anyway. But yeah, this whole thing is like pretty fucking brilliant. The way they incorporate the necessity of not having your whole team there while also writing them in a situation where they have to do less programming. By programming, like if like this variable is this variable is that, you can just say like, okay, we got to that point, okay, now everyone talks. Which just makes it like a much smoother operation, which is like fucking good for them, man. Anyway, so now we gotta head north of Contore through the snow, and then we have like a nice little snow level and whatnot. And then this first level, like it must be bugged because I run through like a whole like dungeon and there's not a single enemy, not once. And then we get to Quince, which is like dun dun dun. It's under the snow. Wow, the whole thing is built under this giant ice sheet. And again, Chiquitita reminds us that her husband is studying there to be a doctor. And then like, oh no, a monster gate appears. And so then we take care of that, and then a guard comes out, and he's like, he's like, oh help. Oh, you guys defeated these monster gates. That's so good. Could you help us inside the city? There's monsters down there. And we're like, well, how the monster gates there? And he's like, because I let them in. And it's like, what? So clearly it's some sort of translation error. Because it's like, but why? And then no one questions this. And they're just like, all right, we'll go into town and take care of it. And it's like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so we get in there, and they also mentioned that the town's burning. Like the monsters have set fire to like the houses and stuff. And there's gates all over. So we kill like I think we kill like one gate, and then we get a cut scene, and then we get this awesome battle with like Max standing in front of a burning building, and then this Wolf Baron guy. And Wolf Barons are these like hand-to-hand fighters. They use claws and stuff. They're like monks essentially from like a lot of other Japanese role-playing games or even Dungeons and Dragons. Like right, they fight with their fists, and then but they don't have like healing magic because there's literal monks in Shining Force as well. But in this, there hasn't been monks in these games for a minute since like Shining Force 3. So anyway. So, but they punch. That's like the brawlers, right? So, this guy, and his name's literally Baron, which is funny because it's Wolf Baron. That's what they're promoted. These werewolves, whenever they're in the game and they're brawling, like their upgrade is always like Baron or Wolf Baron. So it's funny this guy's name is Baron. I would be curious somewhat to see what it is in the Japanese version because I'd imagine it'd be somewhat different. Anyway, so after we have this cool cut scene, we find out that he's the vice captain of the guard here in this town, and we introduce ourselves, and we're like, hey, we're here to see the king. We have a letter from like Rebecca, and he's like, cool, let me take you over there. So we do that. We hand over the letter, and we tell him about our journeys. And then he gives us condolences for Gaia. And we talk about the man in the mask, also the crystal that's here. And it's like, hey, we got to make sure it's okay and whatnot. And so Baron's like, cool, let's go to the sanctuary. So we go down, and it's like the fire sanctuary or something. It's crystal. Oh, no. That's later. This is, I can't remember. Anyway, so the crystal's fine, but then we hear some noises. Monster gates are opening up all over town and in the sanctuary rut row. So we have to clean up all the monster gates and everything. We talk about hitting up the town when then all of a sudden Kane shows up, and he just like smashes the crystal without like much to do about nothing. And then Max is like, the fuck are you doing? Why, brother? And then Kane reveals that he's just a big sour potamus, that he hates his family, he despises his town, he wants to remake the whole world, he wants to kill everybody, he's just like a big emo fucking asshole. And then Max gets mad, talks about having to kill Kane. Kane taunts him like, oh, I don't think you could do it, you're a little bitch and whatnot. And then Kane turns to Meryl after she questions like, why are you doing this and whatnot, and he's like, he again like invites her to join him on like her merry way because they're so much alike and they have the same thing because it's, you know, they're both Clan of the Moon and that they're meant to be together. And she's like, ew, no. Then Kane tells Max that he's going to take everything from him, and then he nopes the fuck out, and then he summons before he does that, he summons a big ass monster for us to fight. After that, Max gets like real down and hard on himself, and then Meryl tries to comfort him and talking about how Kane must have her reasons. And at that point, the king shows up, and he's like, hey man, there's one more sanctuary. It's Hyatt over in Arananore. The problem is Hyatt's across the ocean, right? So the only way to get there is to sail, which would take months. We can fly by an airship, but all the airships have been like destroyed. And then we can take a warp gate, but the warp gates have been sealed on our side, so we can't like, we got to go over there and like unseal it so we can access back to the headquarters so we can get over there. And then at that point, we're like, fuck, I guess we have to take a ship, but 3 months is like way too long. And Baron mentions like, oh, there's another airship. We got to go talk to Captain Rhinos. So Rhinos is the captain of the guard, and he just like was like, he like noped out one day and like just doing his thing. He's just like sailing around in this airship he found, getting drunk and stuff. And this was like 3 years ago. He resigned his commission, disappeared, and then recently people have seen him like joyriding around in this airship, just like living his best life. And then also Baron's like, I've heard rumors that Rhinos is in town to get like to stock up on liquor and whatnot. And so the king is like, hey, can you guys Baron, can you take Max and crew and see if you can find this Rhinos guy? And we learned that he's a member of the Titan race, so they're just like bigger, tougher dudes. So, and we also hear that he's middle-aged, got gray hair, and that he's also a force. Baron's also a force, obviously. And so we split up to find him. We run around with Max for a little bit, then we get Meryl's. We don't take control of her, but we get like a story from her point of view. And she's concerned. It's starting to get a little bit darker, and then she bumps into some drunk guy who's clearly Rhinos. and he accosts her for being by herself, and is like, "Oh, little lady like you shouldn't be by yourself." And she's like, "I can handle myself." And then they banter a little bit before the dude like wanders off. At that point, Meryl gets accosted. Oh, she calls him a drunk bastard. No, she doesn't. Oh, at this point, that's Max does that later. I'm sorry, I skipped it. Anyway, so then at that point, this guy wanders up and he's like, "Oh, you're looking for rhinos? Behold!" And this guy has like a force frame, and he's like, "I am rhinos. Come in here, let's discuss." And she's like, "Oh, okay. Why are we going to this bar?" And he's like, "Oh, it'll be great. Trust me." And so he drags this like 13-year-old girl into this bar. Then we switch over to Max, and Max runs into actual rhinos, and he's like, "What's going on? Something. I'm looking for something." And this guy's just like a drunk, and he's like, "You're a drunk bastard." And it's like, that's rude. And then Rhinos mentions like, "Are you looking for a girl? You should be concerned about her." And then they both hear like a scream, and it comes from the bar. And then Max runs into the rescue, and then Rhinos is like, "Fuck, I gotta help these guys." Finally grows like a conscious. So then we get a cute little cutscene where Meryl is in the bar. It's been kind of thrashed up. There's a trickster, and there's some other guys, and she's got a broom, and she's like fending them off. And then Max runs in, and then the guy uses some sort of gas on Meryl, and then grabs her as like a hostage. At that point, Rhinos like breaks through the fucking wall, grabs this guy, pretty much killing him, I would say. I mean, no, because it's like this game isn't that kind of game. But he grabs this guy, pulls him like through the fucking wall, like the fuck, and then tosses him. And it's like, oh, the guy's not dead. Whatever. Should have killed that motherfucking like rapist. Anyway, and then he takes the force frame from the guy and smashes it as well. At that point, Meryl gets really offended because Rhinos is like, only a dumb idiot would believe that this was an actual force frame, and she's like, rude. Not wrong though. Baron at this point like rolls up and he's like, "Captain!" And we're like, "Oh, hey." And so we beg this guy to let us use his airship, and he's like, "Nah, bros." He's like, "I quit. All I want to do is eat, drink, and fly." And so we beg him some more, and he's like, "All right, I'll make you a deal. If you can find out where I'm hiding out, then I'll let you use the airship." And then he like runs off, and it's like, okay, weird. So then the Baron takes us back to the king, so we can do a report, and then we head on out. So the king orders this point Baron to come under Max's command as well, because he's a force user. And again, it's like another one of those things where it's like, I order you to help Max out and join up as a force, and you guys can be powerful, and you can stop the Clan of the Moon and save the crystals and start Dark Castle and whatnot. And then he's like, well, and then Baron tells us like, well, last I heard, this is where he gives us directions through like the next part of the game. Dungeons, like go east and then go north at this point and whatnot, so that we can find Rhinos. And he's like, hopefully he's still there. That's like the last I heard. All right, cool. And then as I'm wandering over there, I got lost for a minute, and I end up in this like super high level fucking zone. Like I roll in there, and I am cheating, fellas. I have like a lot of cheats on, like an infinite regeneration spell essentially on my character, and then I get like one-shotted by something in here and die, and I was like, fuck. And especially fuck, because again, as I mentioned like way earlier in this video, that when you die, it's not like, all right, back to the church to like try again. It's like, nope, back to your last save point. And I was like, oh Jesus Christ, I haven't saved for like an hour. Thank goodness I'm playing on an emulator, because I just put that thing on like as fast as frame skip as humanly possible and just cruised all the way back up to this point in like 10 minutes. So it wasn't that bad. There's a lot of, really what drags out the story is the story and me writing like notes about the story. So I'm not just trying to recall things like days later when I record these audio logs essentially. So thank God for that. Anyway, so that puts us back on track. As we get closer to Rhino's place, Max is like, who would live here? Baron then states that Rhinos didn't come here to live, he came here to die. And then he tells us that he was in charge of putting down the rebellion that took place 3 years ago at Cascade Castle, right, as the leader and the force user and all that stuff. But unfortunately, his wife and daughter were in the castle, so as they were trying to put down this rebellion, the rebellion found out that it was Rhinos' family in there, and so they murdered him. And so when they cleared it up, he was like, all right, I'm done, I'm ready to die. And as he's wandering around, apparently he found this airship, and then we find the airship, and Rhinos is just up there chilling, relaxing. Byrne points out that this model of his is faster and sleeker, that it's not like the big airships that we used at the very beginning of the game and that they normally use to travel to in Roré, over in Hyatt, specifically the name of the town. I think it's in Roré. They tend to throw around like the capital city names and then the location, like the general state, I guess you could call it, in this game a little too much. So sometimes I get confused what's where. Anyway, so over at Hyatt, right? Anyway, so at that point, Rhinos wanders out, and we tell him the whole story, and we're like, hey, we need help, get over here so we can protect the crystal and yada, yada, yada. And Rhinos is like, cool story, bro. No. Asshole. And then Max calls him out for being a little bitch and not getting over like the death of his family and wanting to die and whatnot. And the guy's like, whatever, you wouldn't understand. And it was like, wrong answer, because Max has lost like his entire family. And so Max is like, no, I do understand, motherfucker, and I'm not a little bitch like you. So he goes through all the family dying or being evil and all this craziness. And Max does a pretty decent job. He has a pretty good speech about everyone and everything that everyone sacrificed and how we're all here and how everything that has occurred. And finally he's able to convince Rhinos that he should help you guys, help us guys get to Hyatt. We then chat about a few random things, like how he got the airship and how he was wandering up here to die. He just found the airship lying in a glacier, so he kind of like dug it out, I guess. And then we talk about how Graham is super excited to see his daughter, Mariel, and then Max teases him about it. And then we talk about Kane a little bit. Kane was last seen leading men into the castle, but that's all that Rhinos really knows. And so finally we head out. We get a cool cutscene where, you know, just like the airship and everything, and then Max walking up to Rhinos at night while he's piloting this thing. And at that point, Rhinos points at this island, and then we see this, like, the moon is like not just like a red moon anymore. It's got like this crazy eye in it or whatever. And then we find out that this island is Hale Prison, like Hail, which is interesting because I didn't mention this before, but like fake Rhinos, regular Rhinos, when he was like beating the shit out of him or yelling at him, was like, you're gonna end up in Hale Prison. And the guy's like, oh fuck. And then so Max is like, oh, I see why people don't I see why they're so reticent to come here. It's like in the middle of nowhere and like an impossible escape. It's like an Alcatraz prison between the two like islands or whatever. But we gotta stop here because Rhinos is like out of gas. He's like, I need to gas up and kind of work on some stuff. So we land, and then people start pointing out that like, hey, anyone else notice that there's like literally no one around here, and this is like an active prison and should have at least guards or something standing around, and it's super spooky. And then some monsters show up, so we beat their asses, and then it's like, all right, well, fuck, we gotta go find out, see if there's any prisoners around here. So we head down to the prison. The whole prison is full of monsters, tons of monster gates, all this stuff. And then we get to like this ridiculous room, like down at the bottom, and we hear battles coming down from lower and down. Oh, sorry, we get to this ridiculous room where there's like a boss in a cage, and I was just killing things for a while, and there were so many monsters in this room, I didn't see that the lever that I needed to open like the boss, so I could actually beat through this level. Or beat through this part of the dungeon. I was like so enraged because I spent like 10 minutes like just killing monsters. I'm like, am I just supposed to kill him for a while? And I kept trying to shoot the boss with my bow and arrow like through the cage, and I was like, why isn't this working? And eventually it was like I killed enough guys, and because the guys keep respawning until the boss is killed. So at some point I cleared enough guys just right, and I was like, wait a second, there's like a fucking lever over here. Like, god damn you, game. Anyway, we heard more noises downstairs from like further down, so we head further down, and eventually we come across like this winged homie guy, and he has like angel wings, right? And he's clearly killed one of the monsters, like one of the demon guys. And as soon as we walk in, he sniffs and he's like, "Ooh, gross humans," and he leaves. And Graham's like, he's like, "That's not an angel, that's a birdling." What are birdling? Birdlings are like the bird folk from the rest of Shining Forest. Only this time, instead of being like actual bird folk, like all the other beasties like the werewolf and whatnot, it's literally just like an angel looking guy. Like it's got like the feathery white wings, and other than that he's like a handsome human, and it's like, I'm kind of like, cowards. He should have been a Birdman, motherfuckers. Like, the fuck is this? And then Max is like, oh, and then Chiquita also noticed before he left, or Chiquitita notices that he had a force frame, so he's a force, and it's like, oh, that's cool. And so Max is like, hey, why do birdlings hate humans so much? And Graham's like, I'll tell you later. It's like, fuck you, Graham. Anyway, we need to focus on the survivors, so we keep doing that. So we keep heading down. Eventually we get to this like creepy scientist guy. His name is Greed, yeah, I think it is just Greed. It's spelled Greid, but they keep saying Greed because this game's voiced. So anyway, he's gonna use. So there's another birdling there. This like hot babe. And he's like, I'm going to use you birdlings to become gods. And then this lady's name is Freya. And she's like, all that shit you're talking about is complete nonsense. Like, you can't become a god by, like, sacrificing us or doing any of this other weird shit you want to do. And then she's like, whatever, do what you want. I'm confident my buddy is going to come save me. And then Greed's like, that buddy? And he, like, points over to their cage. And this guy's name is Klein. We find out later. It's just lying there face down. He's the guy we met earlier. And then we find out Freya's a force as well. And he's like, ooh, I have 2 force birdlings. Maybe I'll breed you and have a breeding program. That'll be exciting. And at that point, we roll in before it gets like 2 PG-13, I guess, for this game, or 2 R-rated. And we find out that all the monsters we met here were just prisoners. Oh, no. Greed turned them all into monsters because he wanted to fight. We find out that eventually, like, his whole thing was he was going to turn everybody into monsters and do something with the birdlings and all this crazy shit so that he could defeat the Clan of the Moon. So, like, I guess, like, noble intent. Because he's, like, scared of these. He's so fucking traumatized from like the last time the Clan of Moon was in charge that he felt like he like justify like anything to try and stop them. And then he thinks we're the Clan of the Moon and that he is the true force and all the other forces are like sneaky forces. And then he's going to revive the Shining Force. Yep. We finally got the name the Shining Force. Awesome. At that point he transforms into like a hideous monster and dies almost immediately. So we release Freya and Klein, and then Freya runs over to Klein, and Klein's like, I hate humans, let's go. And then Freya's really sad, and she's like, sorry about that, he's kind of an asshole. And it's like, that's okay, do you know why he hates all these humans? And Freya's like, yeah, you might want to find out more about this war, because there were a lot of races that died, including most of the birdlings, and you can ask King Hyatt about it, because he knows a lot more about it than I do. Or he can tell you much more, and then she kind of takes off. And Baron is like, oh, yeah. Her and Klein last bird. Okay. She also mentions that her and Klein are the last birdlings in existence, so there are no more. And then right as we're about to leave, Max gets all super concerned that we kill all these innocent monsters. And Graham tells him, like, hey, motherfucker, war is hell. There's no innocence. It's just some shit. And some other, like, propagandist, like, bullshit about being pro-war and whatnot. At that point, Greed starts moaning again, like, as he's, like, in his death throes, about the Clan of the Moon. And then Baron, Chiquitita, and Graham discuss how he became like this. And as they discuss, like, you know, he wanted to do the right thing, and then, you know, he turned real evil, and he was so traumatized and all that stuff. Meryl's like, no, fuck that guy. There's no excuse for that. You don't turn people into monsters. Fuck that guy. And then at some point, Kane shows up, and he's like, Greed, shut the fuck up. And it's like, what? And everybody's like, Kane, what's Kane doing here? Oh my goodness. And then he kills Greed, because I guess we didn't kill him. I thought we'd killed him, but I guess we just, like, beat him up real good. And Greed mentions something. No. Then Kane says something about how he's getting revenge for like what Greed did to him while he was here, how he experimented on him, and that he was going to kill him anyway, or he's going to kill him a long time ago, but then Gaia stopped him for some reason. And that it's directly because of Gaia that Max should be mad at his daddy, because it's his daddy's fault that these people got turned into monsters, because if Kane had just been able to like kill him back in the day, none of this would have happened. And then Max is like, fuck you. Who the fuck are you? You're not my brother. And then Kane is like, I'm your brother. And then Max is like, nah, bitch. Gaia was right here right after Kane was born. And you're not Kane. And then finally Kane's like, come meet me at the last crystal and I will tell you more. And Max is like, I want answers right now, not Kane. And then not Kane is like, I am children of the moon, just like Meryl. We have to stick together. Come with me, Meryl. And then Meryl's like, no, I love Max. I'm going to stay with him, and I will not leave him. But then Not Kane gets mad and keeps saying that Max is scum and that his whole family's scum and all this stuff. And then tells Meryl that her time will come. Eventually you will come to me and you will do what I ask and be a part of the Clan of the Moon again. And then he teleports the fuck out of there. And Graham's like, I don't think he had another brother. So I don't know what's going on with that, because the guy claims to be your brother, but he also claims that when you called him not being Kane, he's like, I'm not Kane. And we're like, man, we need to get the fuck to Hyatt right now. So we head back out, and Rhinus is still just like chilling, and he's like, I got some money for these people with the gas. Did you find anybody for me to pay? And it's like, hey buddy, I got a sad story for you. There's no one to pay because they're all dead, and I killed them because they got turned into monsters. And he's like, huh, all right, whatever. So Meryl's stunned by all this still. She's stunned by like the revelations about Clan of the Moon and kind of everything else that's going on. And Chiquitita and Baron go to check on her. But then they like, yeah, she's okay. That when she confessed her love to you, that kind of stunned her a little bit. You know, that's what happens when a girl confesses their love. Like, you should have confessed back or something, because otherwise she's going to be like, oh, maybe he doesn't like me, or some crazy shit like that. And then Graham, let's see, what does Graham do? Oh, Graham talks about it too, and he's got the super smug look, and he's talking about how much he loves the fact that that Max is so flustered by this whole situation and the romance stuff, and he's like, ooh, I don't know what to do about any of this stuff, and he's like laughing, he's got his fucking smug portrait, and Max is super flustered, and Rhino is finally like, all right, fucking kids, I've had enough of your bullshit, let's get going. I'm tired of this. I'm so tired. And then we trudge along to the next town, San Tovance, which is in the country that Hyatt's in, but it's not right where Hyatt's at. In fact, it's like on the opposite side, or it's a pretty decent walk to get to Hyatt where we actually need to be. And at that point, the airship's given us like all it's going to give, and it's done. So we have to like not crash land, but we have to land. And then Rhinos it's going to take a lot to get this thing fixed up. It might take a while, so we might just need to like walk over to Hyatt. But yeah, at least we're here in Aranor or Norway. So we just kind of wander around, get some information. We find this older lady, Joanne, and she mentions something about the spirits of the dead out in these ruins of Oblivion. And then she talks about how beautiful Meryl is. And I'm like, sure, whatever. Her portrait's okay. Baron flirts with her. It's pretty suave, not going to lie. And so Joanne tells us more about the ruins. They were established 50 to 100 years ago. The spirits of the dead are there. And they say they can speak with people who have passed on. But that it's filled with monsters now. Oh, no. So then we need to go like over there, past this cave, through this cave. And after that, there'll be ruins and whatnot. So we go back to Rhinos to talk about all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, man, the airship's pretty wrecked. I don't know. I'm going to at least like a week or two to fix this thing up. So we probably should just walk. And then he's very distracted this time. And we're like, hey, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I could have sworn I saw my wife and daughter. And so we talk about the ruins and everything. And then Graham's like, I don't know if we have time to go check out this ruins and whatnot. But Max is like, well, if I can talk to my parents here, I need to like figure this out. I need to figure out what's going on with Not Kane, and like why is he trying to torture me, and like what the relationship there is and everything. And so finally everyone's like, all right, let's go to the ruins of Oblivion and figure this out. And then Brandis is like, hold up, I want to come too. So he kicks Graham out because I've been using Graham and Merle this whole time. So then we're gonna take Rhinos and Meryl to the ruins. And so off we go, off through this like deserty sand area, which is super, it's okay. All right, so we push deeper and deeper into these like ruins of Oblivion or whatever, and we find it's kind of cracked, parts of it are flooded, whatever. Once we get super deep, we like enter this chamber, and all of a sudden Mac's like all alone, and it's like, oh no, where'd everybody else go? And then he starts hearing a voice, and we see Gaia, and he says that he's been watching over Max this whole time, and that so is his mother, Maria, that she's been there. And his mom's like, hi, what's up, son? So we talk about stuff. We talk about Not Kane and how he knows things about the family and things that occurred when Kane was like a baby, so there's no way he could have it could be Kane. And the guy tells us about Vandorf, or Vandalorf? I think it's Vandorf. And Vandorf is Gaia's biggest mistake because he's the other son. What? So then Gaia sealed off. He mentions that he sealed off the memories of Vandorf for Kane and for Max. And then we get like the story, and it's like back in the day, we all lived in the Sanctuary of Light in Enoquar, and then we left when Max was about 4. Vandorf, he was so in the war like 13 years ago, Vandorf got pulled into like the Clan of the Moon. Wait. Yeah. So Vandorf was in control. He was the one who kind of started the war 13 years ago, and because he was part of the Clan of the Moon. So 23 years ago, Vandorf was born to a merchant in Cascade Castletown. At the age of 6, he had the mark of the Clan of the Moon on him. And as a child, Vandorf, he ended up destroying like his whole house with like these Clan of the Moon powers. So his parents sent him off to the Hale prison. And while he was there, Greed did a whole bunch of like experiments on him and stuff, and so Gaia actually, when he went there, he went there and saved him and brought him out and like kind of adopted him and whatnot. So he took him as his son. And then at some point when Gaia left to deal with the Clan of the Moon stuff at Cascade Castle, that Vandorf, kind of being left on his own, went and destroyed the crystal at the Sanctuary of Light. And then he was trying to like summon the Dark Castle, but Gaia and Maria and everybody were able to stop him. But unfortunately, during that time, Maria lost her life, and so then Gaia was going to kill Vandorf, but he hesitated and only knocked him off a cliff instead. So Gaia and Rebecca changed the story to being like, oh, there wasn't just one Clan of the Moon monster, like, and that's what it was. Vandorf originally, like, it was just him. Like, it wasn't a whole group of people like 13 years ago. It was just him. And so Gaia tracked him down, knocked him off a cliff. And then they were like, oh, no, it was a whole group. It's a whole clan situation and whatnot. And then at that point... okay. So Gaia and the boys, Max and Kane, would not be killed. Oh, yeah. So then because he doesn't want Max and Cain to be killed. They just want people to associate like Vandorf with his family and be like, well, if he's evil, these guys must be evil too, and we got to do all this stuff. And so he not only sealed the stuff, but they made it seem like there was a whole group, and that the Clan of the Moon is something like different than it actually was. And at that point, Vandorf actually shows up. So not Cain is now Vandorf, right? So we thought he was Cain, then he was not Cain, and now he's Vandorf. He was Vandorf the whole time, actually. So he gets mad at Guy and Maria, and he's like, why are you telling Max everything? And so he does something. He just like launches a laser or something. And then Max talks about killing Vandorf, and then they get into a discussion about how he has possession of Cain's body. So what happened was when Vandorf fell off the cliff, he was injured. He was injured to such a state that he couldn't his physical body couldn't do anything. And so when he just like bid his time and gathered his like spiritual power or something, so that when Cain showed up to Cascade Castle 3 years ago to take care of like the rebellion, Vandorf was like, time to strike, because he knew he needed like a force user with a powerful body. And so Vandorf possessed Cain. So Cain has been Cain the whole time. So it's the body of Cain possessed by Vandorf, who is the older brother of Cain, the older adopted brother of Cain and Max. Jesus Christ. Okay, so so apparently there was like a whole decade where he was just lying around waiting. And that because Maria, as part of her like sacrifice, she had sealed the power of the moon, so that's why Vandorf couldn't just like naturally heal with his like demonic magic or whatever, and that's why he needed to possess a body. And he also was like, I'm not going to just take any body, I'm not going to just take some fucking fisherman, I need to find a body that can defeat Gaia. So Cain was like the perfect sacrifice because he had the strength and power to beat Gaia, and he had lots of other good stuff going on, I guess. So at that point, Vandorf taunts us, and he's kind of like a real fucking asshole at this point. Like, it's just really being a real ass. And then the actual Cain, so Cain's still in there. He's not like completely possessed. So he starts fighting for control of the body. And then it gets commented that something about being here, the dead being raised. So I guess is Cain dead? Anyway, but something about being in this area gives Cain like more control. And so Vandorf's like, ugh, fuck. And so he like nopes out of there before he can like fight us at that juncture, and summons like a whole bunch of monsters for us to fight. So we kill them, and then we escape. And as we escape, we run into Rhinos and Meryl. And so they had like similar experiences. Like Meryl saw her parents and talked to them for a bit. And then Rhinos saw his wife and kid, and they chewed him out real good for being an asshole. And then he's like, all right, I'm going to join you guys. I'm going to go get this airship fixed. Before we came out here, I ran into somebody who said they could do it. So I'm going to go help them, get it refueled, and I'll meet you guys in Hyatt. And he's like, awesome, sounds good, bro. And so he's like, all right, you guys, but you got to keep heading to foot because you got to get to the sanctuary and kind of figure that shit out. And we're like, yeah, sounds good. And then we discussed with the whole Force crew that should we try to save Cain? Should we kill him? Should we try to save Vandorf? Like, what are we doing? And then as we kind of escape out of there, Graham talks about how happy he is to see his daughter again. I know this is like the 14th time I brought this up, but it happens a lot. And Max is like, yes, I agree. And then Graham like teases him. And he's like, oh, you want my daughter too, huh? But you have Meryl. Why are you being so selfish? And Max is like, what? I don't want your daughter. And then he acts all mad. Graham is mad. He's like, what? You don't want to date my daughter? And it's like, God damn, this Joker, man, with his like smug look and everything. So we just kill our way through the desert. There's not really a lot of monsters here. Oh, no. There's plenty of monsters in the desert. But when we get to Hyatt, there's no monsters, as usually the monsters show up right when we get there and we start fighting. So there's none yet. And then we're just standing there chit-chatting when Mariel, who's the daughter of Graham, shows up. And she's like, what are you guys doing here? Don't go through the desert. If you want to take something, you got to wait for an airship, something. And we're like, no, we're coming here. And then we all chit-chat, and then Graham's like, no, it's me, daughter. And she's like, oh, daddy. And I kind of hug it out, I guess, like in my imagination. when you're all this chit-chattering's happening, you just see like the faces with their expressions and dialogue. So then we head in. She's like, well, I got a letter to the king, so let's head and go see Lord Chaos. Yep, that's his name, Chaos. Lord Chaos. And he's a good guy, supposedly. Anyway, so we get there, and this place is gigantic. So big they have like gondola systems traveling to different places and whatever. And this is like a huge industrial center. There's a huge mining aspect. It's just been like a huge commercial like route of like all this stuff. And then we kind of get into a conversation at some point about how like, wow, if they're so, why do they need everybody else if they have all this stuff? And it's like, well, they have this huge industrial base with all this technology and whatnot, but they can't grow food here because they're in the fucking desert. So they got to get food and fish and stuff from like the other cities. So it's like this triumph of cities like works hand in hand to like help each other out. And so After we get economics explained to us, because Max retarded, doesn't know shit about anything, we get led into the Mining King Chaos, and then we hand over the letter and explain everything that's occurred. Chaos is very concerned about Vandorf, as you should be, and about his fucking teleportation spell, which is, he mentions, is like overpowered as shit, which it is. And then Mariel requests permission to go to Dragon Mountain, which is the realm of the Birdlings, and he's like, no. Then they argue for a little bit, and she's like, whatever, I'm going, and she storms off. And then Mac's like, hey, I'm going to go follow Mariel. And right at that point, Rhino shows up. And he's like, what up? Don't worry. Mariel can go. I'll stay here and guard the sanctuary. And then there's like a whole conversation about how Max is like, well, you know, maybe if I don't go to the sanctuary, then Vandorf will never show up, because he keeps talking about how he shows up to like punish me or to harm me and to make me sad. And so it seems like he just shows up to the crystals when I get there, because he's like a real asshole or whatever. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a good point. All right, Rhino, you go. We'll go figure this out. So we head over to the Dragon Mountain, and it's this huge fucking cavern, obviously because dragons are supposed to be living in there and whatnot, or the birdlings can fly out of there and whatever. And then we start getting earthquakes, and it's like, oh, that's weird. There's a lot of earthquakes. And we talk about how it may be related to the Clan of the Moon, or maybe related to something else. Spoiler alert, it's related to something else. But eventually we get all the way down through the Dragon Mountain into the Birdling realm, and there we see... Baron sees some fighting, and the Birdlings are fighting some stuff. So we reach out and save them, and then Klein continues to be an asshole at that point, and then Meryl's like, you need to stop being such an asshole. And then Klein's like, whatever, fuck y'all. And then Freya's like, hey, thank you guys so much, really appreciate it. And then Mariel's like, hey, you gotta leave so you don't get destroyed. There's the earthquakes, and there's like a lot of concern about all the monsters, and if you all die, there's gonna be no more Birdlings and such and such. And you know, the earthquake could like cave in the whole mountain top thingy or whatever. And then Freya's like, oh yeah, we know about the earthquakes, but we like absolutely really hate Hyatt because of what they did during the war. And Mariel mentions to Freya, Mariel mentions that Freya told us to ask Chaos about the Birdlings, but we obviously didn't. And then Mariel's like, well, I know what they did. I know what happened. So once upon a time, this continent of Aranore belonged to the Birdlings. And then about 30 years ago, a bunch of other people came to colonize it. So Lord Chaos established Hyatt in essentially just like one generation. At that point, the Birdlings were welcomed all the people here. But then the Clan of the Moon stuff happened, and the Birdlings and the humans agreed to attack the Legion Hive together, to work together. But then all of a sudden, Lord Chaos retreated, so the Birdlings were completely wiped out, except for Freya and Klein. Mariel still wants to convince the two to leave, and mentions how Freya knows the cause of the earthquakes, and that maybe she can... maybe we can resolve the earthquakes, so even if they won't come with us, they can be safe and well. And at that juncture, there's another huge earthquake that drops Mariel and Max down far, far, far below in another cave. Now, this section only happens if you have Mariel and Max in your party. If you don't, you have to come back like another time to get access to this area. So I just always had Mariel in my party because she seems like one of the main characters, so I kind of lucked out. But anyway, they fall down and they find this egg, and they're talking about the egg, and the egg has like a frame on it. A force frame. And it's like, that's weird. Why would I have that? And then they hear a noise coming from the egg, and then the egg hatches, and it's a baby dragon. Aw, kawaii. And so dragons use force frames too, I guess. I mean, everyone can use a force frame. It's fucking stupid. Like, whatever. Anyway, so... And then we learn that, like, so the dragons... So I can't remember exactly who says this. It's like Mariel recalling something, or the dragon, like, Mariel is like, there's a whole thing about like Mariel being able to speak with the dragons, and it's not because she's like a Clan of the Moon or anything like that. It's just because sometimes humans can talk to dragons, and she just it's like happenstance is able, because of happenstance, she's able to speak with the dragon. And so he tells us that like when there's like a dragon who's a force user, it'll have like one egg, and the egg will receive the force frame, and then the mother dragon will like disappear, and that new dragon will take up the arms of having like the force frame or whatever. Apparently it's a thing. Anyway, so Mariel names this dragon Dryu, and which is baller because he is now the permanent third party of my cast here. And we get lost for a little bit, but eventually Dryu helps us get through this stupid maze to get out of this cavern. And as soon as we pop out, there's Mariel, and she's like, oh, I was so worried and so concerned. I was trying to figure out if to do the Birdlings or wait or do whatever. And then at that point, we're like, all right, Dryu, head back to the headquarters because Mariel has to be in the party. And we're like, adios, it'll be fun. Don't worry, you will be freed from headquarters, unlike the rest of these jokers who are just sent there to die, sent there to like man the teleportation portals or whatever. Anyway, so Mariel was unable to find the Birdlings, and then Meryl remembers that someone at some point was talking about the birdlings can't fly that far, so we just have to follow them the direction they were heading. Oh, my face. It's like, and so we do, and we find them like in the next room, and it's like, Mario, why are you retarded? Oh, Lord. Anyway, so when we get there, Klein is like, you need to leave, and Freya is like, she woke up, and they talk about Dryu and the dragon, and Freya apparently also speaks dragon, so that's cute. So then she confirms the story that Meryl spoke about, and then we all part amicably. And, maybe someday we'll all be friends again and such, but the birdlings. I mean, eventually you come back and they join you, but it's a little bit later. Anyway, so back at Hyatt, Max is like, hey, y'all, I don't know if I should go to the sanctuary. Like, if I never go to the sanctuary, maybe Vandorf will never attack. And I was kind of mind blown at this point. I was like, man, the writing in this game is pretty decent. Like, I wouldn't say good. It's a lot of cliches and a lot of stuff that you can kind of see coming from like a mile away. But it's still fun and it makes sense. And a lot of times with some of these like more janky like games, it's like stuff doesn't make sense, or I don't know what's going on, or it's just kind of stupid. But everything in this is like, yeah, I'm following along very, very simply, and it all makes sense, and I'm enjoying myself, and like, it's an interesting world and whatnot. And this like blew my mind, right? Because it's just like it's so competent. Like, instead of just being like, oh man, I only go to these crystals when you're there because I like to punish you, and then it's like, well, Max is like, well, how about if I just like never go to the fucking crystal, and because maybe that'll save it. And everyone's like, no, you got to be brave, and we got to face our fears, and who's to say that's what he's saying, but he's an asshole, so maybe he's just saying that, and then we'll get down there, and then. Or he'll just like show up and do something later on anyway, or whatever, and like right on cue, god damn, an explosion goes off, and we're like, ruh-roh. So we run down to the sanctuary, and there Rhinos is like by himself fighting all these legions, and they've established a monster gate and all this stuff, and the Chaos is also down there, and he's trying to set up the flame barrier, and the flame barrier is like protecting the crystal because this is the flame sanctuary. And then Meryl mentions that she's getting some chills while we're down here, and that's because she's climbing the moon. Says her power always feels like they're draining away when she is near the crystals, which they obviously are. So Rhinos is going to hang tight right here while we run around and destroy the gates. So we do that, and then deep inside, Vandorf is inside the sanctuary by the crystal, and he states that we have made it possible for him to get near the crystal, that it was all us. And we're like, no, we didn't. And then we get a flashback of all the other crystal encounters, and then even like Vandorf constantly being like, oh, I was waiting for you, or like, oh, about time you showed up, and stuff like that. And then Max is like, whatever, something. And Vandorf is like, you thought I was talking to you, motherfucker? I was talking to her. And he points at Meryl, and it's like, dun, dun, dun. And because we brought Meryl, because she was like Clan of the Moon, it like weakened the crystal barrier or whatever enough so that Vandorf was able to get in. So literally, if we had just not come down here, he would not have been able to get to the crystal. So our friends were idiots, and Max was right. Shockingly, because he's a moron. So he's usually wrong, or says stupid shit. And it's like, wow. And then Waldorf or whatever taunts us and Meryl, and then she has like a moment where she's like freaking out, but Max gets her back on track with his like power of friendship and love and whatnot, and he's like, no, she's one of us, she'll never be a part of you, and all this stuff. And then Vandorf leaves like this huge Legion boss after he shatters the crystal. We kill that, we chase him. Oh, no, that happens before the crystal room, so we chase him, and then he's already defeated like the flame barrier and Chaos, and then we stop him from killing Chaos, but he destroys the crystal anyway. And it's like, now I can summon Dark Crystal, and then Vandorf like, yeah, let's fight. And so he teleports Max and himself over to the Sanctuary of Light and Encore, and Chaos tells everybody else that that's where the Dark Crystal is, and that Max will probably be sacrificed to raise the crystal. And Meryl's like, no, I want to go, I'll go. But Chaos tells us that it's too far away. There's nothing we can do, nothing they can do to like help us out at this juncture, because we'd have to take an airship to fly over there. An airship? Wait a second, we do have an airship. At this juncture, Rhino shows up, and then it's like a huge cutscene time. So we see Max lying down on some grass in this beautiful area, and there's very light everywhere. And then Max starts walking, finds his old house, hears Kane and Max talking, like baby Kane and Max, like little kid Kane and Max. You see some images of them, some like ghosty images. The mommy, Maria, walks out to the boys, and then the images disappear, and then out comes Adam. And it's like, yeah, Adam. Remember Adam? Max and Adam from Shining Force? Yep, that's right. He's the nanny that Graham was talking about earlier, and yeah, he's an android, all right. And he states that inside the house is what Max seeks. So Max wakes up after walking into the house in another area, and Vandorf is there. And he tells us that this Sanctuary of Light, he destroyed the crystal here 13 years ago, kind of reiterates stuff Guy already said. Max threatens him But Vandorf tells him that he must abandon his memory of Cain or he won't be able to defeat him, because when he starts fighting, if he sees Cain, he's going to have a hard time. So then we get a call back to all the things that Gaia said all the way back in the beginning, that we can fight, but that like our desire to save our brother is going to be our greatest flaw or whatever. And so then we fight and we beat him, and then we get another cutscene, and there's another like samurai duel thing that has no resolution. Like we both like run at each other, and then it's like the cha-ching, and then like we're standing facing apart from each other, and then it's just like, okay, cool. Anyway, so then Cain takes over the body and tells Max to destroy the helmet, just like in the regular Shining Force when Cain lost his mask and was able to gain some control over Dark Soul and whatnot. And that clearly the mask was doing all the heavy lifting. So once that's smashed, Cain starts talking. He apologizes. He says he wasn't strong enough to overcome Vandorf on his own. And then Vandorf is like, no, that's true. You weren't strong enough. And that's why Cain wallows in guilt, which makes Vandorf even stronger. And that Vandorf's going to bring forth the castle regardless of what he wants. Then we get another cutscene where this whole home scene is like shattered, and then this badass looking fucking castle rises up from the ground, and this whole scene is like epic as fuck. and then now we're in the castle, and Vandorf is there, and he's floating, and he's being arrogant, and Max calls Vandorf out for using his family, but also that his hatred of Max's family is not the reason he's doing all this. And Vandorf is like, you're right, I want to create a perfect world. And then we call him out for being an asshole, killing millions of people, and then he gets like super offended like after all this time, and he orders us to obey him, and then Max is like, how about you go fuck yourself instead? And then we see another cutscene. Yeah, it's a huge story part. And then he's attacking Max with some dark power. He's torturing Max, and then let's see, Cain stabs him in the back. Cain stabs like Vandorf in the back because they've separated. Vandorf talks about being jealous, Cain talks about being jealous of Vandorf. Vandorf uses some power on him, and then Cain tells Max to flee. And then the airship with Rhinos and Meryl shows up, and she uses some sort of power to like teleport down and grab Max. And Max tries pushing his way towards his brother, towards Cain. Save any spirit. And at this point, he's getting a little depressed that he can't save anybody, and then the spirit of like Meryl grabs his hands and drags him out of there while Vandorf does some monologuing. And we see the castle shoot something at the Eye of the Moon, which sends out all this dark energy and opens portals, which release these meteors all over the planet. Good times. Like, pretty fucking epic. The cutscenes continue, and we see Meryl crashed out on top of Max inside like this crater in the desert, and she's like passed the fuck out. Max is trying to carry her, and he's like really struggling because he's all beat up and shit. And then we go to the moon, and we see this giant like crazy ship-looking thing come out of the Eye of the Moon, and it's some evil Cthulhu-looking monster thing with tentacles and such. And Vandorf calls it the Dark Dragon. Oh, the Dark Dragon. Yeah, you remember the Dark Dragon from Shining Force, right? Yeah. Don't worry, we never fight it. It comes up like one other time. It's really not that big of a deal. Anyway, at that juncture, Max hears like the voice of his parents, and they say to him like the Dark Dragon is the symbol for the end of the world, and the only thing that can save the world now is someone who surpasses the power of a force. And his parents like hype up Max and tell him how great he is, and that he can use the power of friendship and the strength of his self-belief and the strength of justice, and that he can become the Shining Force. Yeah, there it is, Shining Force. He's gonna be the Shining Force. Then he hears Cain speaking up. Cain admits that he had some darkness in him, and that's the reason why Vandorf was able to use him and such. And then pressure from his father kind of made him a little more, and gave him a little more darkness, and unrequited love for Meryl, because Meryl loves Max, gave him a little more darkness, and then Cain really wanted to save Vandorf, and that he still wants to save Vandorf, and then Max like passes the fuck out. Later on, he wakes up and he's in Greensleeves, and Meryl comes running in. Because Max is like screaming in his sleep. Apparently he passed out in the desert, and then Rhinos like found them both, picked them up, and then everyone else is like hanging out in the headquarters. So we head down there and thank everyone for rescuing us and being there for us. And then Meryl tells Max that Rebecca wants to see us. And then Meryl passes out, and Max is like, "No, Meryl, something." And then they have like a very awkward shonen anime romantic scene that goes nowhere, where it's like, oh, yes, I'm going to get really close and then get embarrassed and look away, and she's going to look away and all that good stuff. Anyway, so they get like Meryl situated so that she's okay, and then Max heads down to Rebecca, and then we catch her up on everything that's been going on, and then she catches up on everything on her side. She says, okay, so the Dark Castle is awoken. The legions have fallen to the earth like meteorites, balls of fire everywhere. They're consuming everything. And then that was the first day. And after the first day, things just got quiet. And then Max is like, oh yeah, I remember Vandorf saying something about how he wants to make the world his, and he wants everyone to like bow down to him and let him like reconstruct the world in his image or something. And then also we can't get to Dark Castle because the airship's not going to be strong enough to get there, and there's no way to get there by ship or whatever, so we can't get there yet. Because we definitely go there for the last level. Anyway, Rebecca needs some time to prepare for a counter strike with the other sages, the Liebenim and Chaos. And so first, she assigns us to go get good by grinding out in the Legion hives. There's like 20-something Legion hives, and each one has like a specialty, and you like roll in there, and you use these like unsealing things, because there's been these doors throughout the game that I keep finding. I'm like, the fuck is this? Anyway, so once you you can unseal the doors, you can go in, you fight like a boss and a bunch of his minions, and then you can get like more force powers. And the force powers you attach to like your weapons, and there'll be stuff like kill harpies in one hit, like some pretty powerful shit there. And then after we grind a bit, then we can go to the Ordeal of Light, and there's 3 of those, which I'm saying that now. When I was playing through the game originally, they just mentioned like, oh yeah, the Ordeal of Light in the Birdling home, and I was like, sweet. And then when I went to the Birdling home like later on in the game after I did all this grinding, it was like, you have to go find my brothers first, and I was like, Jesus Christ, game. No one had mentioned this before. Anyway, so and then once we pass the Ordeal of Light, will be the Shining Force, or whatever. So then King Lebanon from Fedland shows up, and so does Chaos. And they talk about how while Vandalf has his guard down, we must get the power of light. Like while they're not really attacking, we can take care of this stuff. And then we find out that the last Shining Force was Maria, my mommy, or Max's mommy, and that she died while she was sealing the Dark Castle last time, and that. After we pass the trial light, we become the Shining Force, and then we can use the power of friendship, because friendship is magic, to challenge the ordeal, and then we can get the light thing, and then we'll be good to go. Another problem though is that since the crystals are gone, even if we defeat the Dark Castle, another Clan of the Moon person could just bring it back at some point. And then Max uses the power, the shonen anime protag power, to encourage everyone to believe in themselves and be like, no matter what happens, we'll team up and use the power of the magic of friendship, and we'll be great. Everything will work out super well. And okay, so the special doors. Oh, okay, yeah, meet Legion Hive's been sealed. She's gonna give us keys. We're grind. Okay, cool. After that, we'll come back and okay. So back at the headquarters, everyone's excited to see Maxwell. Meryl's feeling better as well. We grab a couple of forces to level up and talk to Rebecca. A guard rolls into the headquarters while we're talking to her about everything and says a meteor fell from the heavens. We're close to here, and that and that guard went over to like where it landed, and then there was like a Legion hive, and they heard a lot of screaming inside. And so Max is like, all right, we'll start there and figure that out. So the first Legion hive is the Harpy one. And then we roll up, there's some creepy sound coming in there. We go in there, we kill the Harpies, and then a machine shows up. And then Max and Graham are both like, hey, it's Adam! And we go to talk to it, and it's the Adam. It's the guy from his dreams, the nanny who raised him and all that stuff. And Graham's like, oh, hey, I remember you. And Adam's like, burr, burr, burr. What were you doing? You were in Encore. And he says something about when the Dark Castle appeared in Endor, or Encore, he got blasted in that meteorite all the way here. And then Max is like, I remember you. I remember when you started acting up. I just give you a little slappy-potamus right here, and you'd start acting better, which works, kind of. So we get him to work a little bit, and we find out that Adam is also a force. That's right. Anything, that rock over there can be a fucking force, apparently. This hunk of metal can do it. And that Adam is as strong as Gaia when he's like at full strength. But right now he's kind of like broken a little bit. Anyway, so he joins up, heads right over to the the HQ. So then I use a guide to systematically, because I'm not going to all fucking, I'm cheating, so there's no reason for me to grind, so I'm not going to go to all like 47 like Legion hides. I'm just going to go to the one so I can promote my characters, the teammates, so they can be better. So we grab Meryl and Graham first so we can do their promotions, and then what we have to do is we have to go somewhere specific. Then this is why I used a guide. We have to go talk to someone specific while that person's in our party, and they will give us like hints about where to go, which hive we need to go to, essentially, to unlock their potential. And there's always like a little story about it as well. So we start off. We talk to Rebecca. She tells us Max and Meryl get into a lover's spat about how strong she is and how much of a magic user she is and all this stuff. And then Rebecca's like, well, there's one more trial, Meryl, so if you can be as strong as you can. And then we go to Fort Lackisle, and then a guard there is complaining about Graham being gone. Graham harasses them, makes them do like the oath of the Holy Guard or whatever. Gives them some more inspirational talk. They're inspired, and then it's like, oh, there's a training ground. I need to go become stronger so we can destroy this first. So then we destroy that one. We power up, promote Graham. Then we go to Meryl's. We promote her. Next we do Chiquititas. We take her to Joseph. Chip's sick in bed now, her daughter, but Chiquitita is not strong enough as a magic user, but there's like a place she can go, the Cave of the Ancestors, so we can go there and help first. But then we grabbed Mariel as well as Chiquitita, so then we head over to Lord Chaos. But then we get distracted because when we head over to Lord Chaos, he puts us in like a whole different like quest, because this is like where one of the ordeals of light is in like the birdling home, and then he gives us like the lowdown on like the whole birdling situation. And he mentions that when they first came here, they allied up with the birdlings, and then Max is like, so what happened 13 years ago? And he tells him that the leader of the people, who is Freya's dad, Zophie, he was the master of the bow apparently, and so is Klein. Anyway, so they both rose to prominence within their respective like communities, and then when the Legion attacked, they did like a power play against them, the Legion that is, and then there was a sandstorm that surrounded everybody, and it was Zophie who actually ordered Chaos to take his people and flee, and then he took the rest of the birdlings and did like a hard charge in there, and he did this specifically so Chaos could escape. And Chaos mentioned that he tried to follow, but that they couldn't, and so he's like, fuck, I guess we just gotta go. And that was when the birdlings got wiped out, aside from Klein, who was not at the battle because he was injured, and then Freya because she was too young. So then Sophie requested at some point before like he got killed that Chaos make peace with Klein, and so that they can all be friends, and that Klein and Chaos have not spoken in 13 years. And Rhinos is like, let's kick his ass. We'll knock some sense into him. And Chaos is like, well, maybe there's another way. You can get the bow. The bow's in one of the hives or whatever, and that's the legacy of the birdling. So if we can get it, we can give it to Klein, and that'll show Klein that the people, were there to help him as well. And so Max is going to go with Rhinos to get that taken care of. So we head over there, we get to Klein and Freya, we tell them that everything that Chaos revealed to us. Freya is now mad, not just at Chaos and the humans, but also at her dad for being an asshole and like dying instead of like saving his people. And then Mac's like, yeah, I get that. My dad was also an asshole. and then he should have sacrificed so much in this stupid ass charge. And then everyone talks about how the birdlings can trust Max, even though he's human, because he's legit, and he helps everyone, and he's a super great guy and everything. And then Freya's like, all right, I guess I'll join. And she tells Klein that Klein needs to come with her, because that way they can start having sex and having babies, and he needs to put a baby in her because they need to increase like the birdling flock or whatever. But Klein is still being an asshole, and he's like, all right. She's like, all right, I'll just go find some human. Maybe Max will mate with me. And then Mariel's like, Nani desu ka? And then Klein's like, fine. I want to get that bow first. And Max is like, cool, let's go do that. And then let's see, and then Klein will. And then Freya's like, all right, but then you better propose to me or I'm going to get pissed off and find someone else. And so their hive is like the Medusa hive, which is gross. Klein gets his bow, and then he suffers some sort of ordeal to become like the new leader of like the birdlings and gain all their strength or whatever. And then Klein gets like he gets like the Bene Gesserit, like Reverend Mother, like history of like the people in his brain, and he gets knocked out, and then she goes up and like slaps him awake. So he's like, oh, I'm good, don't worry about it. And I saw the whole history and gained some insight and whatever. And then Klein unlocks the road that leads to the Cavern of the Power of the Light ordeal. And this is the one I walked into, and it's like, go find my brothers first. And I'm like, go fuck yourself, Power of the Light. Anyway, so then we go back to Chaos. Oh, so then Klein and Freya join, and they also promoted. So immediately they join, and immediately they get like extra powers. So like, cool, I guess. And so then we take Mariel back to Chaos, which is originally what the guy told me to do, so that she can learn about like the prior commander and how he went to like fight this guy in a mountain to gain like extra powers so he could fight the Legion 13 years ago, and like he never returned, supposedly because he died. But Mariel's stronger than him, and she can go do it, and she's worried. But we're like, no, with the power of friendship, we'll come help you. So we do. So we go and we destroy that, and then she powers up and promotes, and then finally we take Chiquitita over to her one, so that, and we destroy her hive. I don't remember which one it was, but and at the back wall of this area, it describes this thing which unleashes her true power. So we head back to the village. She gets thanked by everyone. She heals everybody up, and it's like, all right, let's go. So we head back to Lord of Chaos. And oh no, we already did that. Okay, sorry, I did this out of order. I did Chiquitita, and then I came back and did Mariel later. Okay. So then we go and grab... Friendship's Magic, Kill the Legions, Captain Spear... Oh, yeah. She gets the spear of the prior captain. Okay, then we go and switch out for Baron and Rhinos, who remember like the chief and the sub-chief of like the guards at Fedland. So we go talk to King Leibenhain, and he's like... everyone's like sassing each other, like Rhinos and the King mostly, but Baron's also putting some punches in there as well. And then King calls Rhinos a bitch, just like Rhinos' daughter did in the Trial of Ordeals, or the Cave of Ordeals or whatever. Or Oblivion, that's what it was, Oblivion. And that he needs to prove himself, so we got to go to some cave, and the Baron's like, I'll come too. And at the Hive, Baron and Max sass Rhinos before we head in, and then we destroy like the vampire hive, and then we everyone sasses each other some more. There's a lot of sass going around with Rhinos. And then they both promote. And then next up, we take Drew to Joan, who's that lady we met in San Tovance, and she talks about like this old dragon's nest out in the parched desert, and how like the message, or like the rumors, or like the story goes that the dragon's out there, and that's where dragons go to like meet other dragons and to promote and whatever. And we had to bring Meryl along for this too, because she has to translate for Drew. So we go to Legion Hive, we clear it out, Drew does something, connects with his ancestors or something, and gains all their strength. And Meryl's like, look, he's so much stronger than before. And we're like, he still looks like a cute little dragon, and like poke him in the nose. And he's like, beep, 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 beep. And she's like, you're dumb, Max. He's definitely stronger. And he is. He's like immune to everything. It's pretty fantastic. Anyway, lastly, we go get Adam. We take him to our house. And he gets very nostalgic, thinking about Gaia and then everything. And then he mentions like the green graveyard. So we head over there, and I get stuck here for a while because I think I'm supposed to go one place, but the hive's like sitting over in like the right-hand side, like very low. And I was like in the middle. There's like this. I find out later from looking at the guide after I beat the game that this area is like the final dungeon. So after you beat the game, you can come back in here, and this actually is like a procedurally generated dungeon, and it's like the final challenge if you really want. I did not play that. It has nothing to do with the story, and I don't give a fuck about it. Anyway, so we hit the hive finally after we track it down. And we learn that Adam came here with Gaia at some point to help like fight this hive, but that he fell down a hole. And when he fell down the hole, he lost a bunch of his parts, and so we're gonna come here to get his parts back, and that'll help him power up, and then he'll get like Gaia's super attack from the beginning of the game. So we do that, we hit that, and then all right, cool. So now everyone's powered up, everyone's promoted, everyone's leveled up to like past 100, including Max, and it's like, all right, good, thank God. And so time for the Ordeals of Light, and these dungeons suck. They are super long. They might be procedural generated because they just like you pop in and you have to like find like a teleportation to the next level, and it just seems like the levels are just like slapped together. And so it's a lot of moving around, a lot of killing dudes, a lot. They're all fucking long. So we get to the end of the first one, and then Max is like, I feel something. And then there's like this crazy hybrid monster looking thing, and he's like the third avatar of the stars. And we have to fight each one of them, and each one of them gives us a piece of the power of light. But we have to take it from them by beating them and proving that we're worthy of it. And this guy mentions Maria, and Mac's like, that's my mom. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Good luck. So once we beat him, he's laying there on the ground, like being sad. He's not really sad. He's like, good job. I'm so proud of you. Here's some power of the light. And then Meryl's like, oh man, I feel dizzy. And I'm like, hey, you okay? And it's like, well, obviously she's Clan of the Moon, so all this light power is like adverse to like her darkness powers or whatever. Then the second cave, that first cave was like near the Lackeel Fortress. The second one's up in the snowfields between like Cantore and Quince. We get every time we go into these caves, like every force we have gives us like their 2 cents. And like with Adam, it's always ... and the Dryu is always peep, and everyone else is like, you're doing great, Max. We're so proud of you. Oh, this is so awesome. You're doing such a good job. And then we play through like another extremely long, like procedurally generated dungeon before we get to the end. And there, the second avatar of the stars, he looks just like a kind of robot, samurai looking thing. And then he asks us what our plan is, and we're like, our plan is to defeat Vandorf in the Dark Castle. And he's like, and then what are you going to do? And we're like, what, Nani Disca? And he's like, those who gain the power of the service of the light must serve people until the end of the days, because the power of light can also be turned to use evil, just like the power of darkness can be used for good or evil. And it's like, no, I'm confident I can resist temptation. And the guy's like, well, be warned, the power of light can also destroy the world, much like the power of darkness. And he's like, it's like, show me your determination through fighting me. And it's like, cool. And so we fight him, and then same thing. He's like, here's the power of light. Do a good job. My last brother is even stronger than me and my other brother. And we're like, cool. So then we head to the final cave, and like Meryl keeps like, she's like barely hanging on. Max is like, hey, you look real sick. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I think I'll be okay. And it's like, are you pregnant? Like, what is going on? And then she passes out. So we head back to the HQ. And she gets taken care of by Chiquitita and Rebecca, and then she has to leave the party for a while. So instead of using her and Dryu, we throw Adam in the mix because robots are cool. And before we head out, we talk about how she seems like she's doing much better, but she's like, oh, I'm sad, I can't go with you. I'm so bored and lonely here since everyone else has to maintain the headquarters stuff. And we're like, we're going to rest, baby girl. We'll be back in a little bit, and then we'll put a baby in you. And then so we head to the Birdlings ordeal thing. We get some more hype. And then everyone's talking about hooking up with Meryl and having kids and stuff. And then we head to the end of this path, and then we find the Balrog, who's the first avatar of light. It straight up looks like a Balrog, and I think it's even called like a flame demon. And this guy's definitely tougher than his brothers, that's for sure. Let's see. And then Oh yeah, he mentions that a lot of people came to gain like the strength of the power, the power of light, the shining force. Oh, humans call it the shining force. We space aliens from the stars call it the power of light. Cool, or us innovators or whatever. And then before we fight, he wants to ask us something, and he says he asks us what we want to do. We want to defeat Vandorf, seal the Dark Castle, and we're like, oh no, he says that to us, and we're like, yep, that's right. And he tells us the Clan of Moon will never perish. There's always darkness in the world. It's just like there's always light. It's this whole fucking like cliche thing. And that the darkness is what causes the Clan of the Moon to exist at all and exist in all living things. And that even though people have the darkness in them, right? And a lot of this stuff is leading you to like, okay, so Meryl is a Clan of Dark. She's the Clan of the Moon chick, but she can choose to use her powers for good and not evil, right? That's all this kind of chit chat with these guys is trying to like lead you to the conclusion, because then when it comes up later, it's not like all of a sudden it's like, guess what? She'll be fine, right? So that's excellent writing, excellent kind of lead into that, because no one's like, she'll be fine. It's like, oh yeah, people with or individuals who have the Clan of the Moon mark, yada yada yada. Okay. And we're like, no, we're not worried about destroying the Clan of the Moon, because honestly we don't, because of Meryl. We just want to destroy Valdog or Vandolf. And then the guy's like, well, why not end all traces of the Clan of the Moon? Because then Max is like, no, because if I do, I'll be no better than Vandolf. And the guy, Balrog's like, yes, that's right. The power of light can be as destructive as the power of darkness, right? So Ritter, it's the same thing. And he's like, that's why we test. And then we fight and we defeat him. And then he gives Max the power of the light, so we're now the shining force or something. And then, and now we're ready to fight Vandolf, and Chiquitita tells us that Meryl's been kidnapped. Oh no! And Rebecca was hurt. And then Vandolf shows up and he speaks up and he teleports in and Max threatens him, and then Vandolf is like, let me show you my true power, and then he obliterates the first avatar, and it's like, oh, that's super impressive, except we already beat the shit out of him and he was dying anyway, you asshole. And then guess who teleports in? Meryl, because of course Vandolf is the one who kidnapped, and Max tells Vandolf to let her go, and Vandolf is like, I'm not holding her, she's here of her own volition, aren't you, Meryl? And he's like, I just showed her the light or the darkness, and she chose the darkness. And then Vandolf is like, who do you choose, Meryl? And then she's like, Vandolf. And Max is like, no! And he mentions that once she learned the truth and she realized she should remember the Clan of Moon. And then she references the conversation she had with her parents about her parents from Cascade Castle. And then Max like really loses it. And he almost blasts them with the power of the light. And then he gets reminded that if he blasts Vandolf right there, he's going to hurt Meryl as well, because that's why she was feeling sick, right? Because of all the power of the light, and she's got the power, she's like filled with darkness or whatever. And then Vandolf continues being like a real asshole, and he's like, you guys want to fight me? Come get me. In fact, I'm going to open up a portal from your HQ to the Dark Castle so you can get there without any problems whatsoever. And it's like, oh, well, thank you. Maybe you're not as much of an asshole as I thought you were. That's very kind, so that we can get there and start getting through this fucking game finally. And he's like, I want to see you up close, because this is just like a projection, I guess. He didn't actually teleport in here. And then he unprojects him and Meryl out of there. And so we head back to HQ, and everyone's got like a lot of despair in their hearts. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so then Rebecca apologizes. She says she was visiting Meryl and got hit in the back of the head. And she mentions that Meryl is following Vandolf out of her own free will, and reveals that Gaia and her knew that Meryl is a member of the Clan of the Moon. But Rebecca continues to talk about the differences between Vandolf and Meryl, that while Meryl chose to use her powers to help people, Vandolf just wants to use it for destruction, and that just having the power of darkness doesn't make you a good or bad person. And then repeats like what we learned all the way at the end of the game, that anybody can be Clan of the Moon, that it's not a race or even like a religion, it's just like a mark or something that happens. And that Meryl never showed any signs of like the darkness taking over her or making her destructive or whatever. And then Rebecca mentions that she tried to talk Gaia and Maria from taking Meryl and trying to raise her, because they made the same mistake with Vandolf, and that caused a lot of problems. And she was worried about Meryl as well, but then she came to love Meryl, and that she begs us to bring back her precious girl. And we're like, we promise, Grandma. And then after that, Rhino speaks up and he's like, hey, there's a new warp gate over there. It must be the Dark Castle, just like Vandolf told us. Like, hey, that guy is a little bit less of an asshole. That being said, everyone then puts in their 2 cents, talking about how Vandolf is kind of an asshole. And we're like, all right, time to get to Dark Castle. We might need to grind first. And I'm like, no game, I'm done fucking grinding. Let's just get this over with. So then we head inside the Dark Castle, and then everyone again has their 2 cents about how unnatural the castle is and whatnot. And then Adam mentions that the castle used to be called the Ancient Castle before it was known as the Dark Castle, and it's like, what was it called after that? Before that, like, did they build the castle and be like, behold, the Ancient Castle is now finished? I love that shit so much. It's so dumb. Anyway, time to dive in. So Dark Castle, we immediately have to be directed up to the second floor, and then there's the second door we find this big scary door, and everyone makes some comments about the big scary door, as they do. And then Vandorf pops in and he speaks up, and he states that it's the Dark Gate, and beyond the Dark Gate is the Dark Central. Yep. And that's where he awaits us. He then taunts us before giving us a tutorial about how to get around the castle and unlock the Dark Gate. Like, the fuck? Vandorf. Here. You sent a lot of mixed signals, man. That's all I got to say about this. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, so the tutorial goes that there's 3 towers, and each tower has, like, some sort of device or some sort of thing that we have to get into. And once we get in there, we break that seal. And then when all the seals are broken, then we can come back to the Dark Gate. And in all honesty, there are 3 different things we have to, like, unlock. But once we unlock them, we just, like, walk up to the gate, and then there's like another one there, and we destroy that and we go in, and it seems like there's really just 2 towers. So I guess maybe Dark Castle is just like a 3-tower complex, and we start off in the first tower, because pretty quickly before that, Rhino starts calling him out. He's like, why don't you just come out and fight? Stop being a little bitch. And I'm like, thank you. Like, why do we have to do this bullshit puzzle, like wander around this dumbass castle? Whatever. So anyway, we head back down to the first floor, and there we run into Meryl, and she's like, I knew you would come, Max. And Max is like, I'm here for you, babe, and you got to come with us. And she's like, I can't go with you. I told you that's not possible and whatnot. And then just the ladies of the Ark, like just the ladies of the Force ladies, so Freya, Mariel, Chiquitita, all speak up and tell her that they understand, but she should come, and that they love her no matter what, and it's like the real sisterhood and all that stuff, which is something that doesn't happen in real life, but happens in media a lot, so that's fun. And then she's like, no, I can't, and then teleports away. And then we head to like the top of one of the towers, and there we find Meryl again. And then she's like, Max, you need to leave me alone. And he's like, no, I promise to support you no matter what. And she's like, no, I'm confused. And then she teleports again. And then over in the next tower, Max is like, I'm sorry, Meryl. I never asked you what was bothering you or what was your problem, and like ever since you saw your parents in like the ruins of Oblivion, like there's been something wrong, and I was too caught up with being a Force and a Shining Force and taking care of the people, I forgot like my girlfriend and whatever. And then she's like, no, everything's my fault. And she mentions that her parents died protecting her. She learned this in the Fortress of Oblivion because she had the clan of the Moon Mark. And that's what started the whole war from 13 years ago. So not just her parents, but my parents and Cain, and everything's her fault. And nothing bad could have ever possibly happened if she had just not been born. And she's like really depressed about the whole thing. And the whole thing's like super dark. And again, like this game is like shockingly well written. Shocking is that it's kind of goofy and the gameplay is kind of meh, but it's like a Shining Force game that was made by like a secondary company that just is kind of like cribbing off like some very, very rudimentary ideas from like the very first game, like pretty much just the names of characters and things. And anyway, so then she gets like very concerned. She's like, no, Max, you cannot come too close to me because anything that comes close to me dies. And it's like, Jesus Christ, girl. And, and so she's like, you will die too if you don't calm down. And then she teleports away again. And then back down in the basement of the Dark Tower, we find this thing, and it's very similar to the Dark Gate. We find the Dark Power, and then we gotta utilize the Dark Power, so we unlock all that shit, and then it's like, all right, cool, back to the gate. So we go back to the gate, and then Meryl and Waldorf show up, and Waldorf is like taunting us, but Max is like, he's doing the thing he should have done the whole time. He's not engaging. So Waldorf is like teasing him and saying things, and then Max is just like, ignore. Like block and ignore, and starts talking to Meryl directly, and then this makes Waldorf or Vandorf very upset, but if everyone's just ignoring him, there's nothing he can do about it besides pout in the corner, which is what he does. And then so Max finally, as he's like begging and talking to Meryl and telling her how much he loves her and whatnot, he's able to, with the help of the other forces and their talking, convince Meryl that he loves her no matter what, and that they will be together, and if she turns evil, he'll kill her, and then he'll kill himself because life without her is not worth living. And it's like, oh, and it's just like a really good scene, like no lie. Like it's very emotional, and all the characters have good stuff, and even the voice actors who are kind of bad don't know if they're bad, they're very mid, are like really bringing in like everything they've got to make this scene like excellent. So it's very good. And then Voldorf or Van Dorf, I don't know, I keep his goddamn name, is like, you did a good job, kid, after Meryl comes to her side, and then he like teleports away. And then we're back at the Dark Gate, and Max is like real showboaty to like his girlfriend about opening the gate, and he like blasts the thing open. He's like, ta-da! And then we head in, and then we go up some stairs, and there at Dark Central sits Voldorf, and it's just big like room kind of thing with like this thing in the back. And at that point, Voldorf demands that we swear loyal to him, that we bend the knee and stuff, or we're gonna die. And Max is like, hey brother, are you just lonely? Stop being a crybaby and come down here and we can all be friends again. And Voldorf is like, no, I don't wanna. And he goes off in this like rant for a while, and then it's like, all right, well, let's just fight this out, figure this out. And this is like the most annoying boss in the entire game, including the final boss, because he just like teleports around the room, and so you gotta like run up to him, and then he teleports away, and he keeps casting fucking spells, and eventually I'm able to like get him down, but it takes like, it's not like hard by any stretch of the imagination, particularly because I'm cheating and I'm like a level like 200 at this point, but it's kind of annoying to have to chase this guy down and then plink away at him or whatever. And then when we knock him down, we're like, all right, are you ready to listen yet? And he's like, no, I'm not ready to listen. So he teleports away again, and then he starts summoning something. And then it's like, oh no, it's Dark Dragon. And then I'm thinking back to like earlier in the game when I was like, didn't he already summon Dark Dragon? Wasn't that weird tentacled monster beast that like came out of the eye of the moon? So does he have to summon it again, or is it just like hanging out in there, or whatever? Anyway, oh, it's Dark Dragon. Yay, Dark Dragon. The most returning villain of all these games. The ultimate dark power and whatever. And then at that point, Rebecca calls us on her like cell phone or like force phone or whatever. And she's like, hey, Max, you there? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, okay, cool, your dad wants to talk to you. And then like hands the phone over to the King of Felden, Liberman or whatever. And so he wants to chat. And he's like, oh, hey, is the Dark Dragon been summoned there? The Dark Dragon's been summoned before in the history of the world. So we know for a fact it takes a little bit of time. So if you can defeat the summoner before Dark Dragon comes in the world, then it will be like unsummoned. And that's very important because Dark Dragon's going to like destroy everything. And if it comes all the way out, there's not much you can do because it's that fucking powerful and strong and stuff. And then it's like, and they're like, and then him and like Lord Chaos are like, hey, we know you wanted to like talk Van Dorf or Van Dolf into, it's got to be Dorf, right? It's like one of those Japanese things where it's like you put the L instead of the R kind of situation. Anyway, Van Dolf, you wanted to talk to him, but like at this point he's like absorbed so much dark energy and whatnot. And if Dark Dragon gets out because you're too busy trying to be like a good guy, then like the whole world's like fucked. And so maybe you should just like, I don't know, kill your brother and just call it good, and then we can like cry about it later. So we follow. So Max swears that he's actually going to do it this time. Spoiler, he doesn't. And we follow Van Dorf to this like sweet space arena with like the eye of the moon right there and everything. And then finally Van Dorf tells us the story, which we've kind of like put together already. But in case you were having a hard time following this like very straightforward plot, it's that Van Dolf talks about how like, oh, he had a very normal life, and then around the age of 6 some man broke into like his parents' home and like threatened to kill him if they didn't give him like all their money, and then he was like, I want this guy to die, and then he died, and then he was like, oh, I have dark powers, that's interesting, and then everyone like abandoned him and they sent him off to hell prison to be held, and that's when Greed did all the experimentations on him and whatnot. At some point Gaia came around and rescued him, was like, hell no, none of this shit. And then, you know, he lived a life with Cain and with Max, and everything was good, and Maria and Gaia were like actually very good parents, and like Adam was there to help be like the nanny, and you know, everything was great, everything worked real well. But then he heard about this princess who is Meryl, who was also a clan of the moon, and how she was they treated her like completely different, like, oh no, he's like, oh, here we go again, everyone's gonna lose their shit and she's gonna be in a lot of trouble, and then nothing happened, and he was like, now I'm mad because I had to go through all this shit and then this poor innocent child over here didn't, and I blame Meryl, and so I blame Gaia and Maria because they clearly betrayed me. And then Max is like, hold up, the fuck are you talking about? You went and betrayed them. They were just trying to like stop you from doing evil shit, and you fucking dumbass. And then Waldorf is like, well, I got nothing to say about that. So he transforms into a giant legion, and then we beat that ass, and he transforms back, and then he's like, oh, I'm gonna kill everybody, I'm gonna use this like suicide maneuver, and he does this thing that like shakes the whole room and causes a lot of problem, and then Max is like, no, my friends will live. And so he uses the power of light, like all the power of light, to get Meryl and Dryu, who are the two with me at this point, to like get the fuck out of there. And then at that point, like the room goes, and then it's just like we're just like floating in space by the moon. Yep. And we're like, oh man, I'm going to die out here in space and whatnot, but at least my friends are okay. So that was totally worth it. And then Vandolph comes over, he like floats on over, and they talk about using the power of light and dark and how Vandolph could have used the power for darkness to help people, just like the power of light can be used to like hurt people and whatnot, but that was a choice he made, and that neither power is good or evil, and they can both be used to like create or destroy. And then after they chit-chat a bit about that, Vandolph laughs and he's like, all right, I feel like you changed my mind. And Max is like, Nani desu ka? And he's like, I'm going to use my power to send you back and seal the dark castle. And then Max is like, oh, shucks, brother. And he's like, and then Vandolph is like, I just can't stand anyone else being in my castle besides me. I'm not, like, it's like, I'm not crying, you're crying. And then, they both like call each other brother, and it's a very sweet send-off. And then Max gets teleported away. And then Vandolph is just floating alone, and then, like, ready to die in, like, his castle that is his mana is being like drained out to seal it or whatnot. And then the spirits of Gaia and Maria are like, hello son, we're here with you, we're all going to fly off into the eye of the moon and seal it with you. And he's like, thanks guys, I'm sorry I betrayed you and stuff. And with that they all call out to Max and like, Max, you have good friends, we're proud of you, you're the best, live your life and make it your own. And don't worry about being a forest or living in your father's shadows or whatever. The dark castle, I guess, is sealed forever. There's a sequel to this game, so maybe not. But there you go. And then the credits roll. And then after the credits roll, we get a scene, like a cutscene, like an anime cutscene, with Meryl and Max, and they're bringing flowers to supposedly his parents' grave. And Max talks about how he doesn't have the power of light anymore, but he's going to use the power he does have to like help the people of the world and help rebuild and protect those who need protection and whatnot. And then we see Cain wearing like a robe, and he's like watching from a distance, and he like nods like, yes, good, very good. And then he like smiles and walks off, and that's the end of the game. So that's Shining Force Neo. Yep, Shining Force Neo. Very good. The game was all right to play. Obviously, cheating made it much more enjoyable, so it's hard to say if you would enjoy this or not. If you like Diablo games and you like a little bit of a challenge and like wandering around and doing stuff, the story's pretty good. The hard thing with the story is that it's well written, but it's very cliche. Like at no point was I like super shocked or amazed by anything, and there was like no turns where it was like, oh my god, that totally happened. Like if you've seen like, I don't know, every single shonen anime that's ever existed, like I have, like nothing in this game is like surprising or shocking by any stretch of the imagination. That being said, it was still enjoyable, and like the way it was written and the characters and everything, they were, I'm going to say good, but good as in like, if we're looking at like a scale like 0 to 100 and like 50 is like pure average, then this game is like a solid like mid 70s. Like it's like a 75 or a 7 out of 10, and not like an IGN 7 out of 10. Like a 7 out of 10 is in like, yeah, that's a pretty good game. I enjoyed playing it. Like if someone was like, hey, I like Diablo style games and I want to play one that's emulated on a PS2, what do you think of this game? I'd be like, yeah, you'd probably like it. It's pretty good. The story's interesting. It's got a lot of characters. My only qualm is that like the characters just kind of do their own thing, and like yes, adding them to your party will like change kind of how the battles go about, but you have no control over it, so it's kind of annoying. And I do like that you can choose between like having like a more magic build, range build, or melee build, which again is like Diablo, right? You want to play a rogue, the sorcerer, or what do they call him in that? Do they call him a mage? I don't remember. Anyway, or the warrior. Then you're gonna have like a different kind of playthrough of the game. But yeah, so Shining Force Neo, pretty good. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.
That is the solemn truth. As a force, I have always stood by my people. But I am weaker now. I no longer embody the power of light. Still, whatever strength I have left, I will use it for good. Dear Father, Mother, and my dearest brothers, together with Meryl, I shall live my life on this earth to the fullest.